Sally. How are you?
It was on this side.
Good,
It's right
good.
here. Like when I go to Pat's games and stuff,
Joe.
it's not crowded, starts cheering all of a sudden. It's like, it's wicked loud.
Super sensitive.
Yeah, but it's not always, but sometimes. Those are the only holdovers from it. Jeff's wanted a few more minutes. We haven't started just yet anyway. Oh, we're live even. Well, welcome to the Rockport Select Board meeting of Monday, March 11, 2024. We're here in the Rockport Public Library, and we have a great turnout, which is always nice to see our residents coming to let us know what's on your minds. John, we'll start with the town manager's report.
The most important piece of the report is nothing that's in the written report, which is we once again were the bearer of Mother Nature's brunt on Sunday. We saw some significant damage in the storm in January, and then we just apparently doubled down on that damage. Some really significant erosion on the beach side of the Harbor Masters building. The electrical service of the building was impacted, and there are a number of washouts up and down the entire bulkhead. We're just talking about the parking lot on the Fisherman side below Rockport Marine has some significant undermining. So we are working pretty diligently with contractors, engineers to try to put together a good solution. We're hoping to have a meeting with members of the boat club, the fishermen, the Rockport Marine, and everyone to try to get some good solutions together. Obviously, time is short, and we want to get this not only a place for people to be able to use as quickly as possible, but it won't be long, obviously, and that space will be much busier than it is right now. So we have a lot of work to do. There will be some snow fencing that'll be going up in front of the Harbor Masters building tomorrow, and we really want people to stay out of that area. It's not really safe for people to be down there and moving through. They can go to the beach, that's not a problem, but that's just that space, that lawn in front of the Harbor Masters building is not really some place we want folks to be right now. So, for those who, whatever the reasons are, we're getting 100-year storms every 2 months, it seems. So I don't know whose math that is, but it's not a good math, and I quite frankly could do without it. While the January storm, there's some hope there may be some FEMA declaration with that. We're not sure we have the same optimism with yesterday's event. So there's going to likely have to be some of that cost, or most of that cost, will be costs that the town will have to bear. And we also need to be thinking about how do we do this so that the next big storm that hits on May 11th, we can all set our watch to it, does the same thing. And obviously by that point, there's boats in the water, there's floats in the water, there's, who knows where that goes. So we've got a lot of people working on this problem, and I'm hopeful that we can find a solution to it. But again, this is something that is becoming far too routine, and these costs are real, and they're in some ways really unavoidable. So many thanks to we had our public works crews out yesterday checking roads. Our fire chief, Jason Beasley, our EMA director, he was out around, buzzing around in his truck, keeping an eye on things. And we're just going to have to try to continue to do the best we can with it. So that was the biggest news. So we have that, and then I would also just want to add we have a lot on the agenda tonight, but the election that took place in this space last week was, it's lightly attended from a town's perspective, only 665 voters, some of which were absentee voters. But overall, and I say overall because I can't say it's 100% positive, but overall I think there was some positive feelings about the vote taking place here. Our public works and police did a great job in working together to try to flag the street here and make sure people understood there's some short-term issues with parking. I think we learned quite a bit in terms of flow and layout and what we can do better in June for the June vote, which we expect will be a bigger turnout. And I would also expect that, obviously there'll be other influences, other parking-related influences that will maybe put some pressures on that. But many thanks to Graff Brothers Seafood for hosting our employees to be able to park up in the parking lot across the street. Thank you, Kim. That was might be an issue in June. That's true. That's true. But these are, we're just trying to work these bugs out. This is after departing the public safety building and moving the elections over to the town office in the Richardson room. That was an adjustment. That this also is an adjustment. Will take time to improve. The other question that I got was received from a number of people who had emailed or called and had questions. Is this a long-term solution? And the answer is somewhat. This is it's an ADA approved space. So the Secretary of State's office was very keen and very careful in what they wanted to allow as a polling place. That we looked at every public building that we had that would be feasible, both returning to the public safety building, the Opera House, and this building. And this was the only building that passed muster with them, and even then there were questions and concerns. So while, I think most of us would assume that the towns have great sway in making these decisions, the Secretary of State's office actually plays a very big role in determining what is a polling place and where you can use. They were less concerned about parking, while I know certainly our residents were. They were less concerned about that, and they were much more concerned about the layout of the space and that it is accessible. So is it long-term? We'll see. I think, there's a lot of things that can happen in the town in the next 3, 5, 10 years. But, this is an investment that our town has put into a building. It's a wide open space. And I think for those who were able to vote that day, generally the mood was quite positive. So if those who don't want to participate in that, they're certainly more than welcome to use the absentee voting process. It's easy. You can go anytime between 30 days before the election and election day, pick up a ballot. You vote in the town office. It's quick and easy, and you're on your way. So if there are people who really don't want to go through that, that's one really good process, and many, many, many people use it every year. So just my 2 cents on that.
You can even have it mailed to you, right?
Absolutely, yeah. So we'll bring it to you that way, yeah. So anyway, that's. I think this is it's a start, and it will get better. But thank you for everyone for putting up with change, because change is hard. So that's it.
Great, thanks, John.
Thanks.
Next item is public input on non-agenda items. Is there anybody here to make comment there? Next is amendments to, Marcia, did you?
Just a quick question. I think the bylaws for the select board say that the agenda,
Oh, you need to go up to a mic so that the people watching the recording or at home can hear you.
the bylaws for the select board say that the agenda should be made public within 48 hours previous to the meeting, if I remember correctly. And I would ask the select board to consider adding one word to that.
To our bylaws?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I would ask the committee to consider adding business before the word hours. And the reason I ask this, it gives Linda Clancy and also Courier Publications time to get the information, absorb it, so they have Friday and Monday to work on it, because it's so last minute the way it is. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, amendments to the agenda. We had a couple changes that I'd like to propose, mostly because we have so many people here to comment on issues and try to move those issues up further in the agenda than the issues that just the select board needs to stay and talk about. And of course, everybody's more than, we're more than happy to have you stay for the whole meeting, but if we, just as a respect for people's time. So on the agenda, we had, under action items, we had act on order for town clerk to develop articles for annual town meeting warrant. I know we have some folks here who want to talk about some of those issues, so we're going to move that item down to the end of the action items. And second is act on harbor rules and regulations policy, and that item we're going to pull off the agenda. There's some issues based on this most recent storm that we sort of need to consider, so we're going to move that to our April 8th meeting. And then we will move up under act, we're sort of going to split our action items into those. We've got some discussion items where we have people here who want to make comment, and we want to, again, help people say their piece, get their opportunity to participate, but not make them stay here as long as all of us have to stay here. And those items, under discussion items, we've got the fiscal year 25 budget overview, the WRF Task Force final report, and the five-town CSD school budget. I don't see Marie here.
Peter.
Oh, no wonder I didn't see. Hi. Okay, so you're here for that. So that, we thought we could move that item up, the school budget, and this is going to be confusing to everyone. I've got notes on but the idea is to move that up after we act on the memorandum to the Lesher family. And then we would move the WRF task force report up under that, and then the budget also, move all those up, because I know we have folks here for all those items. And then the last E, F, and G would be at the end of our schedule tonight. So is everybody okay with that? As long as we keep track of what we're doing and when we're doing it, and
I'll take your lead.
okay. Do we have a motion to approve the amendments to the agenda?
Perfect time. I'll motion.
Okay.
Propose a motion to approve.
Sure, second.
Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor? Okay, great. All right, next on the agenda, the consent agenda, and this involves Jim Annis, our 5th Select Board member, has resigned due to health issues, and the second item is just approval of our minutes from our last meeting. Do we have a motion to accept the consent agenda?
Which includes a resignation, correct?
Which includes the resignation as well as approval of the minutes.
I make a motion we accept the consent agenda, including Jim's resignation with regret.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Great. And I know Jim may not be watching, but anyway, Jim has been a very valued member of our select board, and we're sorry to see him leave the select board. So thank you, Jim, for all your service. Next is action items. The first is act on committee application. We have Pathways Committee alternate Aaron Englander. Is Aaron here? Oh, there he is, yes. Yeah, great. Do you want to just come up to the mic and since you're here, maybe give us.
I didn't plan to give a speech. Your first public speaking opportunity.
Yeah. Who's going to speak tonight?
Yeah. Right?
You want to just give a brief summary of your background and interest in the committee?
Yeah, sure. Can everybody hear me? Yeah. My name's Aaron Englander. I live locally with my wife and her daughter Rosa, and I've been working for Maine Coast Heritage Trust, running the Erickson Fields vegetable gardens on Route 90 and the program and the property over there. I've been working really closely in the community. Actually know a lot of folks, familiar faces in here. Good to see you all. Thank you for having me. I'm now serving as the Associate Director for Maine Coast Heritage Trust Stewardship Department at Aldermere and Erickson Fields, helping to direct the cattle farm operation and the Erickson Fields, working on community outreach projects locally and throughout the state as well with Maine Coast Heritage Trust. So it just felt like being on the Pathways Committee was a really good fit, since we're all about community and well-being and access to our wonderful preserves, so.
That's great to have you step up and do that. I think that is a very good fit. Anybody have any questions for Aaron or comments?
I'm happy to say that I know him a little bit. My son has worked in their program for the last 3 years. And
Great,
he'd be great to have on the committee.
great. All right, thank you.
All right.
Do we have a,
Excuse ourselves, I think.
Yeah.
Now's the time.
if we hurry up, we can have the motion done before you're out the door. We have a motion to approve Aaron's application.
I move the board approve Pathways Committee application for Aaron Englander as an alternate with term ending in June 2027.
Great, second.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Great. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. Come on, Rosa, good work.
well
Pathways to
done.
the future.
Her first winning motion.
If she could do everything as quickly as that.
Yeah. All right, next is act on memorandum of understanding with the Lesher Family Foundation. John, do you want to start us off on this? And I know MJ, I see MJ here, and Dominic.
Sure, yeah, and you guys might want to go ahead and sit, just because I'm sure we'll end up there. So, in the aftermath of the town's vote last June, and I would probably say it really began with some greater activity in the fall. The Lesher Family Foundation and staff, I mean, largely Orion and I, but also our town attorney, Phil Saucier, also got involved. We were, obviously, while the warrant did a great job in sort of laying out the broad scope and the broad strokes of how the relationship could work between the town and the Lesher Family Foundation in not just constructing a park, really, but also what's the process and how do you take a public park with all that goes with that, all of the constitutional rights, frankly, that all of us have in a public space, the responsibilities of the town in ensuring that the upkeep and maintenance of that park are at a certain level. How do we involve who makes final decisions? It's there's a lot actually to consider, right? And if we put that all in a warrant article, people would have fallen asleep before they got to the third page. So you really have to sort of take the voters' work and then get down to business to really outline that agreement. What the voters really were asking or were asked is to give the board the responsibility to lay out the groundwork of doing that. So this is really what that memorandum of understanding does. It really talks about how these two entities will work together. And again, obviously a great deal of work has already been accomplished, but how that will occur over the next 2 years. And then setting the stage for the construction. How's the construction contracts approved? When does it go to the planning board? When does the final plan come back to the board? The conservancy. There's a number of other issues that aren't wrapped really up in this in full, because this is really the first of many agreements that will probably occur between these parties to get this off the ground. But the MOU really being the starting point of the relationship and to devise what those responsibilities are for each party. So Kathy Blaha obviously was heavily involved, as well as Dominic and Mary Jane. And we met, I would say, maybe not a half dozen times, but 4 or 5 times at least over that time, some on Zoom, some in person. But it was quite helpful. We, sending back and forth different versions of this. And I think that we've got something that will that will work not only for now, but will grow with as the process evolves. That's really the trick is not to pigeonhole any of this conversation into something that can't grow, because quite frankly, that's a lot that's left unknown. As you know, the public process that's been ongoing, the working group that's ongoing, there's still a lot that is firming up in terms of what the specifics are of what this park entails and how that process. The last, talking about mission statements and a long way to go. So, you want something that breathes and works with what we know of our relationship. But anyway, so that was the starting point, and that's really what this MOU starts with. It will, if there are amendments and adjustments, this is something that's completely amendable as we go down that road, and it's something that can be, adjusted over time. But this was, I think, and I won't speak for the LFF, but at least from my perspective, in terms of the town's perspective, it's a great first starting point for us, because our responsibilities are, yes, they are to provide a park, right? And our voters have spoken quite loudly of what they want to see. That this is 87% of the voters last June said this is the approach they want to see applied. But there's some pieces of that vote or our roles as the town leadership and representing the wishes of the citizens. There's some things we can't give away, even if we make it easier in the creation of the park or the production of the park. So you have to ensure that those starting points and those building blocks. If you look at it as a sandbox, you have to have an edge for the sandbox. The sand goes everywhere. So I think that we have a good foundation here that will allow us to work within and with enough of a broad stroke that doesn't limit what the working group and the various individuals who, in such an impressive way in our town, in our community, have sort of come together to try to add to this park. So I'm very happy with the work put in thus far, and in a broader sense. But I think this MOU underscores it and allows us to jump off. I don't know if MJ.
I just want to interject.
Yeah.
So this has been a consensus between the towns,
Yeah.
people working on it, and them.
Yeah.
And everything, all the details are stipulated in here.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
good.
Do either of you want to add anything?
Hi, everyone. Dominic Pepper, for those that I don't know. I'm the executive director of the Lesher Family Foundation, and we've just been thrilled to be able to do this process with you all. We're excited that this starts to frame out what our working relationship will be up till construction, and then, like John said, that's when the town will be contracting and building out their, working with the general contractors, and then from there, working with the Conservancy for management. So this is sort of our first step into this, and I just want to thank you all for the opportunity to be able to do this with you.
Well, go ahead, MJ.
Oh, just thank you all for your help thus far. John, you've been great. And a plug that I hope I'll see lots of you at the design meeting tomorrow night at the high school at 5:30.
Yeah, and right back at you in terms of the thank you for the generosity of the Lesher Family Foundation. The level of work as going through this MOU is really impressive. There's a lot of detail and a lot of issues that have been addressed in here, which, you'd like to think it's as easy as you're going to give us some money, you're going to spend money on a park for us. Great, thanks. We'll see you in a couple years. But it's not that easy, and just a review of this document indicates that a lot of thought and time went into it. So thank you to both sides on
You
that.
said the meeting was here?
High school.
High school.
High school, yep.
Yeah. And you have 3 proposed designs for
3
people to-
designs, everyone will get to vote. And a reminder, you don't have to be a resident to vote, so tell your friends, neighbors, and nearby towns.
Great. Any other questions or comments by the board? All right, do we have a motion?
I move the board approve the memorandum of understanding with Lesher Family Foundation concerning RAS Park development as presented.
Second.
Second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Okay. Great. Thank you very much for coming here and for all the work you're doing. And see you tomorrow night.
See you tomorrow
Thanks.
night.
Okay,
Are
next
you,
up.
are you gonna live stream that as well, or just in person? Just a question.
That one won't be live streamed. It will be recorded, thanks to Jeff. So we will send it out after the fact if you
Okay.
can't join.
Because I can't do that tomorrow.
There will be a survey that will be published after as well with a similar voting activity, so.
Okay, thanks.
Great.
Yeah.
Good. Okay, next is, we've got Peter here on behalf of the Five-Town CSD School District, and we'll talk about the upcoming school budget. And for those of you, your tax bill that you get is a compilation of bills from the school district, the county, and the town of Rockport. So when you see the bottom line tax number, the town of Rockport is actually a small fraction of that, and the schools are something that our community invests in and believes in strongly, and it's a part of our budget.
Put him on the hot seat. all of a
Yeah.
sudden. Yeah. It's his fault.
Yeah. No, I appreciate you coming. It's nice to have
My pleasure.
ahead of time information on what the school district is working on.
So my name is Pete Orn. I'm the business manager for the Five-Town CSD, as well as the Camden Rockport Schools. The agenda item said one school district, but we're actually two school districts, as many of you know. Two separate EINs, two separate budgets, everything's doubled. My job is a lot of budgets, and a lot of audits. I've been doing this for 2 years with these two districts. Before that, I was actually on the school board for the previous 6 years prior to that. I've also been a business manager here locally in the Knox County for the last 10 years. I love the job. I love the area. Got a bunch of kids went through the system. I know most everybody in the room. And unfortunately, Maria didn't feel like she should share whatever she has ailing her today. So she sent me. It's two presentations. I'm going to try to kind of speed through them. So if I am going too fast, just stop me and I'll go back. But I didn't want to, because it's set up for two separate presentations, two separate school districts. But I also think that, as a resident of Camden, although, I don't see it as two districts. I see it as one. I see that one. I see the tax bill. I see the one amount that's for schools, and for me, it's together. So I also don't believe in holding the. I believe in eating dessert first. So I'm going to first go to the total impact. So this is bottom line what the two districts will be budgeting for next year, and this is showing the increase for the two towns that are actually part of both these districts, which is just Camden and Rockport, for this year and last year. This is, I know Maria would say, probably her hardest budget in the last 10 years. We came in, our status quo budget, which is really just holding the line on everything that we know, came in at almost 8% for one district and 10% on the other district. There are a lot of things that are just hitting us now, and I'll go through some of that. But most of our increases, taxpayer increases over the years, have been in the 2%, 3%, and 4% range. So this is really way out of our comfort level. But I'll kind of go through what those numbers include. The big drivers of our budget. Really, we had a huge increase in our property and casualty insurance. It almost doubled last year, or this current year. It went from $100,000 to over $225,000. We ended up renegotiating with a different company and got it down to $190,000, but it was still substantial. So that is, we're overspending it actually this year, and this 25 budget includes the increase. And a lot of these increases are things that are happening to us right now that we didn't budget for, that we're actually trying to budget for properly next year because they were just unknowns. The biggest thing that happened to us this year is we have a program in special ed that works with our self-contained students, our most severe students in terms of behavior and the level of support they need. It was contracted by a company who came in and ran the program for us in both districts. And they didn't charge us. They just charged the insurance company for the services. So that's how they got paid. They pulled out at the end of last year in both districts, requiring us to go and actually employ and contract and do that ourselves. That by itself, between the two districts, was a $650,000 increase that we did not anticipate. We had no idea that was coming. We've basically frozen the budget in a lot of areas this year to make sure that we don't overspend. But that budgeting for that program has got to go into next year. Special ed is one of the areas that we do get subsidy from. It's 2 years lagging, so it is one thing that goes into the funding formula from the state, but the 2025 increases and the 2024 increases this year won't happen until 2 more years from now. So it's, and we get half of that back in subsidy. And that's one thing that's kind of done outside the funding formula. So no matter whether you're a low receiver or a high receiver, these special ed costs actually do come back to the taxpayer. Health insurance, we're still have an unknown. We just know that our utilization was above our premiums, so we expect between a 6 and 8% increase in our health insurance premiums this year. Our teacher's contract was just negotiated and is in the process of being ratified. The teachers for the previous 3 years, because they negotiated right as COVID was beginning, and if you remember, we all thought the market was going to crash, that it was going to be deflation. Remember, oil prices were negative for a day. That didn't really happen. So the teachers then negotiated a 1.75% increase to their contract each year for 3 years. Clearly, that didn't come close to the cost of living, and I mean, I know what you probably saw your last year's budget in terms of your increases, which was probably almost 9%, I think, was budgeted in both Camden and Rockport and a lot of local towns. The teacher cost of living for next year, the adjustment or the contract will be 7.5%, and then the following years will be actually much closer to what's expected for inflation. So it's not. I don't believe it's been ratified yet, so I don't want to say too much about that. But it's a very reasonable contract, and the 7.5 does do a little bit to make sure that the staff is taken care of. And we spent $20 million on payroll. Most of that comes back locally. Most of our staff lives locally. Our support staff, while they received individual coverage, have never received a share or the contribution of any dependent coverage. So next year's budget includes the opportunity for the district to pay a portion of dependent coverage for staff, bus drivers, ed techs, food service, usually our lowest paid staff, and usually the staff that most of them are calendar year employees. Special ed in general, not only just the program, but we're seeing increases in the number of students, the percentage of our students, which has gone from 12, 13% up to 16, 17, 18% in some areas. It's not as high as surrounding as Rockland or some of the other areas, RSU 40, but we see a lot. And it's not just the numbers, it's the complexity of them. It's not just the need for an occasional support inside the classroom. It could be a life skills program for an autistic child that moves in the area, or it could be behavior. But those programs are expensive. Just for comparison, when we have to send a student to a program that we can't, just exceeds our abilities to treat that child. Some of those programs cost over $700 a day, including the cost of our share of their main care expenses. For $175 a day, for 175 days a year, you can do the math. Luckily, we have a program in town here that we don't have to pay for transportation. Otherwise, that requires usually a vehicle and a driver full-time, just for each student at each school. It's just something that we're always aware of. We always have to budget for, just in case. We're looking to see what is coming down. We're seeing right now from CDS, we're looking at our special ed students coming from the 4-year-old programs, and the numbers are just double, triple, quadruple what we've seen in previous years. And this is pretty similar to what I saw in my time in Rockland too. It's just happening now here instead of 5 years ago. The other area that we're seeing increases is McKinney-Vento is our homeless students, students that are moving from town to town. McKinney-Vento is the statute that requires us to help these children stay in school, stay in their school of record, whether they live in Rockland and come to Camden Hills, or whether they live in Rockport and they go to Oceanside or Belfast or somewhere close. We have to keep track of those students because they're moving a lot, especially as the seasons change. And then we need to transport them, and we split the transportation costs of that. But that's, we ended up just buying a van just a couple weeks ago because we really had no capacity anymore to do this. And but these are students that, no fault of their own, are homeless temporarily, hopefully. And so this gets them to school. I was lucky enough to be able to drive them a couple of days ago. I did that run. I double as a bus driver when we all doubled as something. Those are some of the big drivers that kind of go over both districts. So I just wanted to kind of highlight them instead of repeating myself over after we go through it. On the positive side, we carry a pretty substantial balance in the bank. Interest rates have been higher. We're making about 5% now on our checking account. So interest revenue has been up. We're upwards of almost $150,000 a year in interest revenue. There's obviously the risk when interest rates go down, and we'll have to reduce that revenue. Our tuition revenue, especially at the high school, we budget for over 65 students. Most of the students are coming from St. George, who doesn't have a high school. Northport doesn't have a high school. But we are, every year, we keep having more and more students want to come to Camden Hills. And so that's a good thing. And that really benefits us. Because it was really, our budget, I know people like to talk about budgets on a per student basis, but we really budget on capacity. So it doesn't, adding a student doesn't always add that extra $18,000. At some point, after 10 students, it might add something, but we budget by capacity. So this really helps utilize our capacity. It makes us more efficient. The subsidy in both districts have increased. The Camden Rockport subsidy, like I said, is just special ed costs. Again, as special ed costs go up, that's going to keep going up. In the five-town CSD, we have a substantial increase in subsidy. Rockport didn't get a big increase. I don't know if many of you know that Rockport, for the first time last year in the CSD, received subsidy. So that's done based on the funding formula. It's not a lot, but it says that we're at that level that we can do, and we can be strategic in some of the things that we do in the five-town CSD, because, for example, in the funding formula, if we get an approved school bus, that amount by the state, when they approve it, gets added to our subsidy after the regular funding formula. So if you're receiving subsidy, that incremental cost is 100%. So if the CSD bought a school bus right now and got approved, it was approved by the DOE, even an electric school bus for $400,000, 4 towns would pay nothing. So there's some strategic things that we can think of now that Rockport is doing that. It's still Camden still will be paying a share of that. But when 65% of your expenses is paid for, it makes you think that maybe we should do some things differently. So I'll go on to the presentation. If I can figure out this Mac. I'm not really a Mac guy. Be kind, work hard, keep learning. Mission of the two districts. The filters, what we use every year. This is, best interest of the students. How do you maintain the learning environment that's most effective? How do we actually allocate our resources properly? What's fiscally responsible for our taxpayers? It's something that we're all taxpayers too. As we sit around the table trying to figure out how we can get by with as little as we can, and then how do we just make sure we incorporate long-term planning in the budget process. We came in pretty close to the board goals. Like I said, we start this in December, and we have a pretty good idea what our pro forma, what our status quo budget is going to be. The board gave us a goal of 8%. We didn't try to get to 8%. If it came in at 8.5 or 9, and because we had to have it, we would have presented that. If it came in at 6, we would have presented that too. It was not. We didn't try to hit that number. We tried to just be prudent, but we're pretty close. We're pretty accurate in our estimates. We came in at just under 8%. The taxpayer increase because of some revenue increases also was 8%. This is the elementary. This is Camden Rockport. Sorry, I should have said that. This is the elementary, pre-K to 8. If you look, this is our enrollments. If you look at 2014, 761. And next year projected, so projected 24 means October of 24, so it's the fiscal 25, 686. We haven't seen that few a number in a decade. It's becoming harder and harder for, we believe, families to live in this area, and especially young families. So we're seeing a decrease in our kindergarten enrollment, and that is going to bubble through the district. I mean, we are looking. We don't see that changing. So we are looking at decreased enrollments in this district, and then you'll see at the CSD, even though the CSD is at its highest level ever, we don't see that lasting. We see that being very short-lived. So something that we are watching closely, and Maria is very good at kind of looking at Penn Bay's birth rates and everything else, any information we can get to kind of work on that. This is some of the story that you'll see as I just went over. Property insurance, family health, health insurance. We've got a couple of capital projects in this district that are going to come from the general fund, or parts will. Rose Hall, which was value engineered not to include repointing of the brick building. We have a wall that faces Knowlton Street that water pours in during rainstorms. So we're going to have to repoint at least that one side of that building. And then we have a fire suppression flushing that, based on new statutes, is happening. You're probably seeing that in some of your buildings too. We're also, we have some capital reserve projects. These are not coming from the general fund. These are money that we've been put away or were raised in in one case, the middle school project. A softball field is being installed. That money is just finally going to be spent. Subsidy. This is the elementary against special ed. About $100,000 increase in subsidy. This shows the tax impact and the expense increase over year. You can see, we're not used to increases this high. The only increases that were, fiscal 19, which was the building of the middle school. These are the buildings. These are the only thing that ever caused this kind of increase. We budget by article, regular instruction. Again, the increases are, this is mostly teachers and staff. I'm going to run through these. I'm happy to come back to them. There's a summary later on, and I've got printed copies here, and the presentation will be on the website as well. Special education, This is their share of the program, $300,000. We also have another student that we expect to be privately placed, so we have an increase in there. Sports, extracurricular, not a lot of wages in here, mostly increases in just the cost to run the events. Student and staff support, this is everything from the library to guidance to curriculum development, technology. Again, the increases are pretty much reflective of the wage increases and the health increases that we're expecting. Same thing, system administration, that's superintendent, the board, and my office. And that just represents half of the CSD cost. There's only one line in this budget. It's just half of what the CSD is. We all work for the CSD. Transportation, again, this is partly because of McKinney-Vento and the homeless. We've had to add another driver, as well as this is where you also see the family health benefits happening, because there were no family independent coverage in this. Part of this, because in this case, the SAD runs all the transportation for both districts. The CSD contracts with the SAD, so part of this will come back in revenue. Facilities, we really have kind of scaled back to only what we've had to do, and we're using our capital reserve for anything that we can. We've also, in facilities, this is where we usually raise money for our capital reserve here, $150,000 in this district. We did not raise that in this article this year. What we did was we used the money that we've always raised in a budget. We've actually moved that to debt because we had said that we were going to pay for this new heating and ventilation system at the elementary school with money that was already budgeted. So this is where we moved it from. We didn't have to increase the budget to pay for that bond payment. So we just moved it from facilities where we had the money and moved it to our debt payment. And this is our contingency. And this really would go to special ed. Really, this is for mostly a special ed student that would come into the district, because if somebody moved in, anybody who moved in, we just would have to, you can't say no. Quick summary. This is the revenue side. This is the non-assessment revenue side. And most of this we kind of touched on. Tuition is not a big issue in this district, but we do have 2 students that come from other districts that do pay for their special ed costs. So we do recoup special ed costs for students that are here by agreement. They're not residents. Transportation revenue, that's the CSD paying the SAD, the Camden Rockport Schools, for its share of the Camden Rockport runs that they run for the elementary levels. Interest, again, I did it at 4%. We're getting paid 5%. Again, I'd rather be conservative with a lot of these. Rental income is mostly internal rent. We also get rent from the Montessori school, the Elm Street school. And then we get a small amount in superintendent agreements subsidy. The state recalculates our subsidy from some of the students that we take in on agreements, and they give us the greater of what we would have gotten here as a subsidy, which is 0, or what they would have gotten at their sending school. So we do get that subsidy from the state. And then the state subsidy itself increased a little bit. The other thing is we're using less of our fund balance, so under the carry forward. We've been using $165,000 generally to balance the budget. I think it was $250 a couple years ago. We're lowering that because there's a risk there, and we also see the risk in interest rates as well as tuition. So we wanted to be able to add that back if we needed to while we have fund balance, but we didn't feel like we needed to use it this year, that we have other sources of revenue. But to be dependent on your own savings account every year is dangerous. So I'd rather get that down to zero and use it when we need to mitigate, tax increases is kind of how I would use that. Non-assessment revenue from the previous page, this is, these are numbers that from the state, the required amount, that is the amount that the state requires the Camden Rockport schools to raise between the two towns in order to benefit from any kind of subsidy. The debt is from the debt that has been approved at other referendums between the two towns. And the difference is the additional local that balances our budget. Tax impact, I think we saw that from the first slide, and this kind of shows how that tax impact affects the towns differently. This year, I think for the first time, I think in probably at least 3, maybe much longer than that, Rockport's increase was higher than Camden's. And that really is just about the relative number of students each town sends and the relative valuation, not the absolute, but in this case, I think you'll see the Camden's student count decreased by about 13 students. Rockport's increased by 2. So the relative share is increased, which affects the required local. And then the valuation, same thing, the relative valuations, Rockport increased slightly. The relative valuation is a little bit more complicated because you know that Rockport's valuation is not $672 million. So the state actually divides that your valuation between the two districts based on the relative number of students, elementary versus high school. So that's a moving target as well. So that affects the percentages. So you might see the SAD's tax impact be very different than the CSD's tax impact. This is this based on $100,000, and then based on I think this is from Zillow. I couldn't find a median value that seemed normal. Maybe one was over $1 million. It was so I just went to Zillow and just got their average value on Zillow to show kind of the tax impact for an average home. Fund balance, this is what we have in the bank, basically. This is our savings account. This is important to us because, like you, our revenue is not linear. That we could actually have 3 payrolls before our first subsidy or checks come from the towns. So early in the year, this is what we use to pay the bills, is our fund balance. Then our capital reserve, you can see we didn't put any more in the capital reserve, but we are going to be projecting to spend a great deal of that on some of these buildings. From the capital, these are the projects we're doing. The Montessori wing at the elementary school. The elementary school, that side of it was built as like a residential construction. So it's in need of a lot of work. So we're going to continue to do what we can on that. The playground project is we have to redo our playground as we are going to mothball the geothermal system. That's all under the playground right now. So that will be converted to a playground similar to what has been installed at the middle school, kind of a playscape, more natural. Additional drainage for the softball fields. This is on top of what the middle school project is going to pay for to make sure we have proper drainage. If anybody's played there over the years, it needs it. And then culvert repair is a culvert that has been falling apart that overlooks the McGonagall River that DEP is having us make sure that we fix. These are just housekeeping, spending grants, spending reserves if necessary. The school nutrition program, we're not asking for any more money for that. As you know, the district subsidizes that. We don't, does not make a profit, nor is it intended to, but we do work to make sure that all of our revenue does cover at least all of our fixed costs, which for us, labor is fixed costs. And so that's the Camden Rockport. Now the CSD, again, I'm going to try to fly
Can we
through this.
speed it up? We've got a heavy agenda tonight. I
I'm-
appreciate all the work that goes
So-
into this, but I know we have a lot of people here on other issues. So.
So I'm happy to speed this up. Again, worth noting is that this is actually our theoretical max in our student count for that building. We'll be there, but we don't expect to be there for long. Same expenses. Again, tax impact. I'm not going to go article by article. It's all pretty much the same information.
Needs at that at the high school.
Which one?
Broadly, the capital needs of the high school and the fact that there are a number of projects that probably are coming due during the age of the building and age of.
Our new
the
high school?
plan. Our new, a lot of us still feel like it's new,
I think
but.
it feels- So it's 23 years old. There are a lot of problems that we're having with just the building envelope. So we're seeing leaks in the windows, we're seeing leaks in the siding, we're seeing leaks in the roofs. We have another geothermal system there that luckily is not dependent on for the entire heating system, but that's been failing. These were open systems. Unfortunately, they were not closed loop systems. So saltwater, they get they're just not successful in Maine. So we'll be looking at some point to replace that. The high school does have LP as well as oil burners, so we do have the ability to use those if necessary. But there will be a project coming up that we will be looking at to improve that. And I think my approach is going to be similar to what we did in Rockland, which was really a holistic approach into energy and air quality, and look to see what projects make sense, what projects will actually have payback to help pay for themselves. But there will be a lot of those needs coming up. We do have one project this summer, next year, that is a special ed classroom. Right now, we have one special ed program that is in the basement of the high school, not appropriate for anybody. But we are in the process of going to build in the next year a small 1,800 square foot classroom on the old practice field down at the high school. That will be totally funded from money from our capital reserve. So we're trying to be very sensitive to the projects that we know are coming with the projects that we need right now. Anything else you can think about that?
That's about it. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure. There's going through the budget, and then there's the next budget, and so everyone keeps in mind what they're thinking about, and so when they see about when the next budget,
We're
they
thinking
sort of know
really
what's coming.
hard about that.
Yeah.
We're looking to make sure that we do that in a very responsible way.
Yeah.
So,
I'll go back to our increase. Oh, here it is. Rockport.
so you said the overall taxpayer increase is 7.89. Here, Rockport is less than the average. Again, the mix of students, so many moving parts with this. Share of students decreased here, high school. So more elementary, less high school. I guess a lot of graduates.
I know one.
So we add the 2404 onto the 52 that was in the other.
Yep.
I should have put that together. These are the other projects. Tennis courts are being repaired finally. We've been trying to do some of these projects. Some of these projects have been approved in prior years. We just couldn't find anybody to do the work. So we're actually going to kind of reauthorize the projects each year that don't get done, as opposed to just carrying them over and trying to remember and having, you know, this is more transparent, we believe. Again, housekeeping, and this is really the one slide that we started with, the combined increases.
Well, thank you for all the information. And, well, it's good to see that, I mean, no surprise that a lot of thought has gone into this.
It does. And please, anybody, my door is always open. Maria's door's.
Yeah, does anybody on the board have questions while we have Peter here? Okay. Great. Thank you. And I know you'll be having there'll be another presentation.
We will do public presentations. I believe they're coming up on Monday, a week from today.
That's what I was thinking, March 18th.
And then the budget meeting will be on Monday, May 11th. And the budget meeting is really where the budget is determined. You know, it's not the referendum, it's really that day. That is really the in-person meeting. So I would encourage anybody who wants to be part of that process. We still do a town meeting, unlike Camden.
Great. Thank you very much, Peter.
Thanks, Peter.
All right. Next on the agenda is the WRRF Task Force final report.
I wasn't sure when, so
I know,
get up whenever you set to.
Yep.
Anybody want to join me, or your shift?
Yeah, you don't mind, Sam?
Good.
Don't leave him alone. Wait a minute, Sam. Come on.
Well, I only brought a 52 slide deck. You know, yeah.
Spare me.
Right. So this is sort of I think you have this memo that I'm going to look after briefly in your packets, so you've got what I'm going to say anyway. But about 11 months ago, this got created, the WRF Task Force, to look at a couple of things, primarily related to siting finding a location for a potential wastewater treatment plant and the technology selection. And at this point, we've achieved that. One of the big pieces, we had a public meeting, 2 of them last week, where we took feedback from the public. Some general comments, but none of them were really affecting the decisions or the recommendations from the task force as far as location and technology. So as we mentioned during the presentations last week, our primary recommendation is to site the WRF at Penn Bay Medical Center using this, we'll call it the Lincolnville technology. It's a long SAGB. I won't bore you with all the words associated with it, but our fundamental objective, or I guess recommendation, is SAGB technology at the hospital property. The second choice for us is to do the same technology at Public Works. There are some differences in the feasibility and risk associated with each facility, and I think I would call it a 55-45 decision, if you will, in terms of percent. You know, we weren't leaning completely on the hospital, but we felt by and large that was the better place to locate it. There's probably some due diligence that's going to be done, you know, if and when this gets approved, that may, you know, switch that around a little bit. But at this point, it's the hospital and SAGB technology. And we're also recommending that the Route 90 extension be completed. We think that that's an important piece of the economic model associated with the WRF. And that's something I think that we all felt should be completed in association with this. Sort of associated with the economic model piece, one of the pieces of feedback we did get from the public was that they would like to have seen more detail on the financing models. So Sam and I are going to spend some time working with Megan here over the next couple of weeks and try and get some additional granularity to you all for the April meeting. And fundamentally, some of the assumptions we made for the economic models we presented was that there would be no grant money available, no earmarks, no reserves. We already have roughly $2 million we think we can apply to it. So we felt that we needed to make sure that we created a model that may be more reflective and less conservative of what things look like. And you all can decide what to do with it, but that's something that we're going to look to do for you in advance of the April meeting. And then as far as public workshopping of that, we'd probably look to do that sometime in April or May ahead of the vote, but we haven't worked that out. That's not been something we've taken the time to figure out yet. So that's really it. 11 months and we're almost done.
Yeah, you don't want to count the hours that you all spent.
No,
on
I
this.
don't.
It's phenomenal what you all did for us.
So any questions, we're happy to answer them, and we'll remain available through the, we're not
Any
walking out
questions on the
tonight.
board for Bill or Sam? I see Doug and Bob Colmar are also here, who are also on the task force.
Right.
And again, thank you so much. I know we have some public folks who want to make comment on the recommendation, and then we can talk briefly. I mean, just for everybody's understanding, our task tonight is really to just move forward on several questions that would be on our ballot, including this one. The real decision point on what we do with the ballot vis-a-vis this particular project will be at our April 8th meeting. But we're happy to hear from folks. We'd appreciate if people could keep their comments to a short amount of time, because we do have a lot of other things on our agenda. And I think Peter wanted to maybe, do you guys have anything more you want to add at this point?
No, we're pretty much there as far as our
Okay.
recommendations, so unless you want us up here for questions that may
I
come up.
don't think so. I think we're just going to hear some public comment, and so
Okay.
very much appreciate all your work and
Thank you.
being here.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, so I think Peter Ralston, you were going to come up and speak to some issues that a group of you have been. For everybody's information, we received a letter this morning from a group of residents, and I think Taylor and Peter are sort of representative of that group, and you'll tell me what you want to, I'm assuming you want to sort of summarize or state what you provided in the letter, but
I heard
let's
keep
listen.
it short, and I know who you were talking to.
Yeah,
So,
I heard 4 minutes.
get it going.
She
So-
didn't tell me what I had to do, though.
So we've been asked to speak on behalf of a citizens group, both Camden and Rockport residents, that's been meeting for about a year on this matter. These remarks really buttress the letter you all received from our group, as well as publicly air our thinking for the very first time. First, kudos to the task force. You guys really knocked it out of the park. It's a great report. And to Woodard and Curran, who produced that, and to the Select Board for getting us this far through the work of these two dedicated groups. Kudos, too, for all the efforts to try to work with the town of Camden. We know that repeated efforts have been made in that direction, a key part of this. But bottom line, the two towns have not yet been able to come together to collaboratively address what might be the best possible of all options. Informed collaboration regarding how our two towns resolve the extremely complex and expensive challenges of our wastewater treatment and disposal. This matter is one that will affect us and those to come for decades, for generations. And although we are two towns, we believe that we need to address this as one community. To that end, we respectfully submit that the proposed June vote, limited only to choosing between two sites in Rockport, that the preliminary engineering report, that's a tongue twister for me, so the PER, has identified as premature for, among other reasons, the following reasons. Rockport residents need time to fully understand the complexities and ramifications of what's going on. A lot of local examples of projects like this really taking even more time. The school, the turbines across the bay, on and on and on. Both the proposed hospital and public work sites, we believe, come with major siting problems that are going to prove really challenging. Too much of the financial reckoning in the PER is, in our opinion, iffy. Much of the PER financial projections depend on significant development out on Route 90. Again, iffy for a host of reasons in this context. If the proposed vote, June vote, were to be defeated by Rockport voters, Rockport would lose a great deal of leverage in hopefully getting Camden to embrace embrace exploration of a partnership sort of relationship in all of this. Further, the negative aspects of the vote could also adversely affect future applications for grants funding. And let's not forget that June voting is notoriously light on attendance, we think additionally jeopardizing that measure. There are other reasons to slow down, but we suggest that the overarching reason to postpone the June vote is that we very strongly believe that the best possible option is to work with Camden in a, to use a word that they repeatedly used at their December Select Board meeting, in a partnership manner to create something like a combined municipal water district wherein all parties stand to benefit. Getting close. We submit that if Camden ultimately chooses to spurn Rockport efforts to explore the benefits of partnership in all of this, then at least we can say that we really have exhausted any and all hopes of collaboration, and then offer the proposed site or other options in the November vote. But let's give partnership option one last try. Camden has acknowledged that they haven't been able to seriously focus on the mechanics of their system to the extent that we have. Let's give them time to do that. Let's share with our Camden neighbors what we have learned through our work to date. Give them our preliminary engineering report. It's really magnificent. Let them know we have done the work that we were challenged to do. Let them know that we are eager to share with them all that we have learned to date. They have acknowledged that their system is old and is going to require work and time and money to bring it up to sound environmental standards. Let's give them time to fully explore the multiple financial benefits of a collaborative system. Let them consider the extent to which the $30+ million we are contemplating spending for a standalone system could help them remedy their aging facilities, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Recent history has proven that we are able to successfully collaborate. Witness the school, the dump, the police department, and soon we hope with an EMS partnership. Let's slow down and give neighborly municipal cooperation one last chance in this regard. Let us not divorce, a word that's been used in all of this. We believe that the voters of both towns will favor that option once they understand what's truly at stake. That's
Okay.
under 5.
That was well done. Thank you.
I think.
Okay.
So that's.
I mean,
that's-
we've talked around this issue. I hear what you're asking for is that we delay the vote. I guess the other thing we might throw out, and we're not at a decision point, but is the possibility of going to the vote, getting the vote, and having that nothing in that vote would preclude a group of, sort of town representatives to meet with Camden after that point, and at that point, we'd have the ultimate of leverage. I mean, Camden has told us every which way possible that they don't want to collaborate with us on the sewage treatment plant. They've told us in personal meetings, they've told us at select board meetings, they've told us in writing, they've told us at court-ordered mediation. So we're sort of like, yeah, we could keep trying, but at some point, our view is, and again, we're going to sort of go through the process here with getting a warrant article written, and we'll have the ultimate decision on April 8th. But at some point, we have to consider our sewer users and the very high rates they pay. We pay in Rockport double what Camden users pay for sewer. And a large part of that is because we have to pay for our own internal system of getting it to Camden, as well as paying for Camden's internal system for them to get all their wastewater to the wastewater treatment plant. So that's something that I think just as a Rockport sewer user and on behalf of our Rockport sewer users, we just need to factor in. And it's just a question of timing is what I'm hearing, and that if we can sort of go along parallel paths, even if folks are really determined and convinced that we could get Camden to finally pay attention to us and want this, because we have been trying for nigh on 5 years now, since 2019. To do that. So that's just to give some folks in the room some background on this issue, because it's been a long thought out, worked hard on issue. Anybody else want to?
We know you've worked really hard on this.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that crosses my mind is, regardless of the merit of a standalone system that Rockport might build, it strikes me that 2 or 3 months for the for the residents of the town to fully understand the ramifications of spending $30 million plus or minus. I mean, that's a lot of money for a town like this. And I would advocate that spend a little more time, let the public get comfortable with what you're proposing, because I think it would stand a better chance of passing if it were left to percolate a little bit longer.
Good. Okay.
I have a question, like, I don't know
Thank
how
you.
to phrase this exactly, but tonight, I know we're not making the final decision to put it on the ballot. If we were to approve what we're supposed to approve now, to have the language to get the town clerk, you know.
Right, to
time
draft the warrant
warrant.
article. And
I mean, that kind of sets a stage that we would plan in our next meeting.
Well, because right now we don't have any language
Right.
to react, you know, it's sort of like we'll have incorporated.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no point of no return.
Yeah.
The whole notion is the April 8th meeting is when we actually decide what's going to be on the ballot.
So hypothetically then, if we were to approve tonight's aspect of it, and then before April, we go, you know what, maybe we should give a little more time to make sure we sell this to the residents. Could it then be applied to the November, the same language be applied to November?
Yeah, we wouldn't have lost anything in that, and we will have the benefit of the additional work that Bill and Sam are going to do to really look carefully at the Route 90 expansion and the assumptions on that, which I think are important.
'Cause I got to admit, when I heard, it came to light today, the whole concept of how short a time it might be for the people to get on board with it. And
Yeah, I
that-
mean, very good public
Yeah.
meetings we had on this
Yeah,
topic, and
yeah.
very detailed, but, you know, that was, not every town resident was
Yeah,
there.
that's the part
Now,
that-
that information's all available online,
Yeah.
but it's,
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I
yeah,
can see the points, and knowing that we're, I don't know if it's public, but that we're working to have a joint select board meeting on EMS.
yep. And Camden has specifically not wanted that.
That's what I was, yeah, I didn't know the standards
I've
of
worked
that.
on dates, and it's like, it's
Yeah,
on
that-
this subject.
Yeah, so that to me will be kind of
So I appreciate
a
the
telling point.
the heartfelt desire to have a different outcome with
Yeah.
Camden, and I'll never say never, but I feel like
Yeah.
Is there a meeting set up?
not on sewer, but on EMS. And that's still to be confirmed with Camden. We've
Yeah.
worked out our dates for
Yeah.
them.
There was one date that was coming up, but then they had to change it, so I don't know when that's gonna be, but
Yeah.
that to me would be a
Yeah, I mean,
good
they
canary
are
in the coal
interested in
mine, sort
working
of.
with us on EMS, which is great. I mean, we'll take every opportunity we can to work with our neighbors and make sure we get good results for our residents.
That would be my first direct opportunity to be involved
Yeah.
with them.
Anything else?
Hmm.
Taylor?
Yeah, one thing that occurred to me listening to the schools presentation, I was on the school board at the time when the new high school was developed. And that was the third vote over many years about upgrading the systems here in town, in the two towns. 2 votes failed. And it took years for the school boards to recover from those failures. And the subsequent iterations, I think, got closer to what the town really wanted. And we must have spent, I know we spent at least a year going to any group in town or in any of the 5 towns that would hear us in order to explain what we had in mind. And when the vote was held, 80% of the voters approved the new district. So I think there's value in giving things like this time. And I guess that's my
And
point.
that just has to be balanced against the calls and the pleas from residents who now have sewer liens on their properties. They're paying more in sewer bills than they are in taxes. But I appreciate your point.
Because no matter what, we don't own Camden's facility, so.
Well,
it's a
the
direct
idea,
cost.
one of the ideas would be,
If they don't
to-
want it, I've asked.
would be to explore the idea of a district.
Yeah,
where
I've
we're each
asked them specifically, and I've been told no.
Okay?
So I'm just letting you know, I have asked that question because that was my initial idea, was make it a district, just like we do with the waste facility. They said it would work. They don't want to do it. I was flat out told, no, we don't want that.
Okay.
Recently, watching the the December Camden board meeting, we saw a
Yeah,
crack
there's that
in their
much.
wall.
I know.
Like there's a chink in the wall. They started talking for the first time, several times, about partnership. This is kind of like, this is good. About workshops together. They started talking about, we don't know what we don't know. I think,
Yeah, I agree with that. I've asked them,
Yeah.
we've all asked them. I mean, every one of us has sat down with at least one or more of their members.
oh, I know you have. You guys have
and
killed
said,
yourselves.
Can we do this? Yeah, Michelle did with,
Yeah.
Michelle and I both sat with them numerous times.
Yeah.
And it was always a no. I mean, the first question, we'd say, can we do, no, it's not an option. That's where we ended up. Just so you know, where we came from, it was a wall.
Like Taylor says, that some of that played out with the school. It took
Right,
some
I
time.
understand. I'm just saying, if the longer we drag this out, the higher the sewer bills are going to become. We don't own their facility. Therefore, we can't bond or pay for their facility. We have to actually just directly charge the users for that number. So the longer you drag it out, the higher our bills are gonna get here. I'm just putting it out as an understanding that we don't own it, we can't bond it.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not arguing that we shouldn't try, because we have. I'm just letting you know, when June rolls around and we have to set the next budget, it's gonna be $3, $4 more per unit, because Camden's gonna have to raise their rates to keep working on their infrastructure, and they like to pass that on to us.
We understand.
Okay,
We're hopeful.
Yeah,
We think,
I know, those are, from my conversations, that's what I have gathered. So, I'm gonna leave it at that, because I don't wanna say anymore. Because then I'll
Yeah.
just-
Thanks for hearing us.
yeah, thanks a million.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right. Sure, come on over to the mic.
I'm still Marcia Steinglass. The only thing I wanted to point out is that the members of the select board change all the time.
Yep, that's,
And maybe with a change in some of the members of the select board, you'll have people who have a different view.
Yeah, that was our hope at their last election. Yeah,
yeah.
it wasn't as hopeful as we had thought.
Yeah, go ahead, Philip.
Thank you. My name is Philip Conkling, and I'm a resident of Camden. So Camden has a dog in this issue, and I want to say that I speak with some trepidation of being a foreigner here, but I did, for 18 years, live here in Rockport before moving to Camden, and have been a little bit of a veteran of community politics between the two towns. Denise knows that the Rockport Library, the effort to rebuild the library here, ultimately took 9 years. And when it came time to bond $1.5 million from the town for the town's portion of rebuilding this library, it took a very large effort on behalf of the volunteers of the Rockport Library Foundation to run a political campaign to get that vote, and it won by about 5 or 6%, something like that, for $1.5 million. So, the point that you made, Denise, that wow, when we get this vote, we'll be in a much stronger position with with Camden. True, if it wins. $29 million? You think that's going to win in Rockport? A bond for $29 million? Well, you know better than I do, but what happens if it loses? If it loses, and you have to go back to Camden and say, we need you. Our fees are too high. People are paying more for sewer fees than they are for their taxes. We need you. We're not going to build our own system. But now, what? We need you even more. I mean, you're taking a huge risk, is what I think. I also think, you know, as a Camden resident, that Camden is taking a huge risk by saying, Rockport, we don't want to deal with you. And I don't, and I know a little bit about the, you know, intricacies of that discussion on the Camden side, and that is because their chief environmental issue right now is water quality in the river. And they have a huge process going on, and they're going to spend real money improving the water quality of the river. But when the water quality of the harbor continues to be terrible and overridden by, you know, these I&I events, what have they accomplished? So I do think the prospect that they take a step back, meaning Camden, I grant you, you guys have knocked on the door repeatedly and in good faith and, you know, asked them to reopen the door, and they haven't. But there is now a group in Camden as well that is saying to the Camden Select Board, informally, you know, guys, women, you, take a step back. Look what is in everybody's best interest. Nobody knows the answer to that. So loading the gun to, you know, to your own heads with a $29 million bond issue proposal, I don't think it helps you.
Well,
So I just wanted to put that out there. There are 2 vacancies on the Camden Select Board that will be filled in a new election. I think several, you know, more vacancies in Rockport. So, you know, I think everybody should take a deep breath and think through what their risks are for, on both sides, for failure to analyze this joint, you know, the possibility of not getting a divorce. Granted, Camden has said over and over divorce, but I don't think that's Camden's best thinking. And I don't think they've been pressured to think through what's in their best interests.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would agree with you. I mean, thank you for that comment.
One question on.
Come up to the mic, just.
My name's Zach Herrick, resident of Rockport. I just have one question for clarification on the wastewater plant. From my understanding, funding of it would be paid for through people that are tied into wastewater already, or is that every taxpayer?
No, it's just the sewer users and those whose property the lines run by.
Great. So when we talk about this $29 million bond in a vote for April 8th, does every Rockport resident get to vote on that, or just the ones that are
Every
tied?
Rockport resident will vote on it on the June
So
ballot.
people can vote on it even though they're not financially responsible?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
just a crazy thing with the way
Yep.
sewers work. Yeah, and I thought, you know, I think our efforts will be, you know, people have to understand what it means for their sewer rates. I mean, you can get scared away by the big numbers, but when you're talking about infrastructure investment in a town, those numbers are big, but you break them down into what that ends up being for sewer users and the debt service on a, you know, quarterly basis, on a rate basis as compared to what we're currently paying. But that, totally appreciate the comments, and we're not taking this lightly. We're listening, and want to move forward in a considered fashion that is in the best interest of our residents.
And I just want to make sure I understood too, when Bill was speaking earlier, he was saying Megan, they're going to go together to really review the numbers, to tighten them up, to see what bonds might be available and stuff like that to.
Right, because we haven't even assumed any grants yet, but we know we already have $2 million sort of available, plus there are probably another $2 to $3 million that could be available through earmarks or other sources, and that hasn't been factored in at all. Also, an 8.5% interest rate was assumed for the long-term debt, and we have good reason to believe that we're eligible for USDA loans at a 3.5% interest rate. So all of those obviously will make a big difference in how that translates down into people's sewer rates within Rockport. So
That'll be good to have those.
yeah, and I'm
it'd be
very
more
grateful
encouraging.
again for this wonderful work by the task force, and now particularly Bill and Sam, who are going to look carefully at these numbers, because we want to make a decision based on the best facts available to us. Okay. I guess we will move along. This is just a sort of a budget night. I think next is our fiscal year 25 budget overview.
We're doing that now.
I think so, because we got a lot of budget committee folks here.
Yeah.
Although we should be in training for long meetings and staying up late.
I'm going to miss Jeopardy. I'm going to miss Jeopardy. Oh, it is recording, yes. Actually.
That's why you wanted this job. You didn't want to have to watch Jeopardy.
Oh, you're so wrong. I have it DVRing right now. At least I can skip through the commercials then.
Yeah,
We're on break for a second.
I should stretch my legs while we have a second.
yeah.
Just seventh inning stretch.
Yeah, take a stretch. Jeff wants a break. We'll reconvene
Is this where we
in
see him take me out to the ball game, or is it Sweet Caroline? I don't know.
the wave.
So, Lenny and Nathan are at the seafood reception.
Where?
In Boston, at the Seafood Expo, at the main seafood reception, yeah. So Janet made the trip.
That's great.
Yeah. So of course, Lenny made sure to get a selfie.
Smart.
Oh, yeah.
Knows how to grab a good opportunity.
Go to the Fisherman's Forum stuff at Rockland in Samoset recently? Or just
No,
like one of
we
those
gotta do
things?
that one.
Yeah.
Oh, this is the school stuff.
This was the stuff.
Yeah.
That's a slideshow, right? Yeah, I've got it as a PowerPoint.
That's good, because I didn't.
I couldn't open.
Cousin Beth, why on earth did you do that? She's a staunch Republican.
Oh,
My sister-in-law, yeah.
Oh.
And now they're at the hockey game, and I can't watch it because it's the local station's playing.
What are we doing on the budget overview?
That's their seats.
No, I mean, what are you doing with it?
Semi
I
nosebleed.
tried to open the link to see this.
Oh, because it's a PowerPoint, so it's probably
Okay,
why.
thank you.
Like,
Because I don't have that.
you have to download
Well, I didn't know
it,
how in-depth
and
we
then
were
it will
doing
play.
it. so-
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That makes sense. I knew it'd be something I wasn't gonna screw around.
You could have gone.
He was like, time is ticking, I gotta finish reviewing all this stuff.
Yeah. Thank you, Sam. Good night.
Right. She already had 25.
Yeah, can you sit up
She
here?
already had all the signatures.
I'm gonna do my best to do this.
Oh,
I need a little like.
She was still sitting there, so I'm like, oh, maybe she needs more signatures.
Oh.
So I went and signed it.
like a TV producer going, wrap it up,
That's
wrap it
a
up,
30
or you'll never see us go stretch.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
That's good. No, it's totally fair.
It's okay. It's okay.
That's part of the job. Do I have my bulletproof vest on? No.
2 minutes would be amazing. For John. Okay.
did not see the long.
I haven't said anything I wouldn't say, I never say.
You never said it.
Oh, it's good.
Did you get yours yet? All right.
Budget overview, which.
Well, I didn't know if you needed it. I already said. Here.
It's an awkward thing. It's funny how you just.
I see people with big binders over there.
I had, it turned out.
So I don't know how much we're going over tonight. I hope it's just that first, this
think it was-
first section.
Oh, I got partway through. I was getting annoyed by spelling errors
Well,
and that
yeah,
kind of
there's
stuff.
that.
And I think a number error. It showed like the budget was like some, it's like 2,297% increase
I haven't even got.
overall. I'm like, what?
That's all right.
There's one section. It's like it's about 10 different errors. In it.
We have magnifying glasses.
Oh, my goodness. I'll bring mine next time.
I almost brought a page magnifier.
I've got one of those right
I
sitting
know
by
there's
my
like
chair.
you can put
Oh,
on
yeah,
magnifiers.
Wrong to ask him.
I got one
I
of
don't think
those
the print
right
could be any
beside
smaller.
my chair.
I don't think the print could be any smaller. Yeah.
All right, let's get started again, just to keep the evening moving.
Okay.
Our next item is still under discussion items. We'll just close that group out, is the fiscal year '25 budget overview.
I'm so sorry.
Oh, Mark, no, point to
Oh,
Mark.
sorry.
Mark, knock it out. Thanks.
Okay,
Just trying, he was, just trying to help him out back.
it's like old times.
It's like old times, that's right, that's right. All right, well, welcome, everybody. This is an uncommon piece. Usually we don't include the budget overview as a part of a regular select board meeting, but due to the way that the budget fell and the timing fell, it just so happened this was the time. So nevertheless, tonight this is the sort of high-level 1,000-foot view of the budget. The first budget meeting will occur here later this week, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. So let's just go right into it. So we get the budget schedule. That's, I mean, come on, right? Yeah. So we get tonight's budget overview. That's March 11th. We have the first review meeting where we go through public works, parks, cemeteries, library, and I won't list them all. Then on Tuesday, the 19th, everyone will meet again to review police department, animal control, public safety building, EMS, fire. So that obviously will be a fairly lengthy discussion. And then on the 25th will be the final meeting, which will be buildings and grounds, assessing, town clerk, and some of the more town office-based departments. So on this schedule, there's a Tuesday, 26th Budget Committee meeting. That's a meeting that may have to be moved because that may be one of the nights that this board is hoping to meet with the town of Camden. So I'm going to talk to them after and we'll figure that out. But so Budget Committee, hang on to that idea. You could still meet, but none of the four of them nor I could attend, which I'm not sure if that's valuable for you or not. Maybe it's better to not have us there. I don't know. But in any event, that meeting may have to move. The April 1st Select Board meeting, that will be the review of basically the final product of those three meetings and the recommendations from the Budget Committee, weighing those all out and making a final budget. Now, in a different manner than how the board has handled its budgets in past years, the hope is those three review meetings are a bit more impactful. In the last few years, when we've done them, there's sort of been a bit of questions, and then we sort of move on, and then we actually sit down, and then the board goes through line by line through each budget. And it's sort of redundant. So the hope is that as we have those initial review sections, we have a number of, in fact, everyone has had at least 1 year on this, apart from Michael and Kim. So the Budget Committee has a bit of experience. Eric and Denise certainly have been through that. Staff have been through that, that process. But effectively, we're hoping those initial handful of meetings where we go through every department, those first 3, will be a bit more productive and allow us to perhaps get a little bit closer to some ideas as to what the final budget will look like, or at the very least to say, for example, let's say insurance. There's nothing we're going to change here in insurance. Let's take that off the plate. That's not another department we really need to work on. Whereas police, for example, maybe there's more to talk about there, and we want to make sure that Chief Gagne's at the meeting on the on the 1st, so that we're sort of able to continue that conversation and do so with department heads in the room, and everyone's able to get to a good number at the end. There is a little bit of a crunch at the end, so as we're going back to the schedule here, so again, April 1st is when the board's going to set their budget. That will be the board will be approving a final budget that night. That April 8th, the following Monday, is the warrant. So I'm going to have to take your work on the 1st, and Megan's going to take her spreadsheet, and we're going to turn that into a warrant that 7 days later you will discuss. Now, as we just discussed, there's a whole bunch of other things that also need to be on that warrant. But this one's the important one because this is how we fund the town. And so we move from the 8th and then fast forward to June 11th town meeting. Now, there's one date that is not on here, which is the date of the public hearing. So we had discussed a change to that process last year, and Eric, you probably remember this better than anybody because it was your suggestion. Of course it was. The idea was to have some more of a dialogue and give and take about what's on the ballot, a little bit closer to when people are actually voting. So there is the public hearing process that is part of that. And as we put on our schedules here that are in everyone's budget books, we've set a date of May 28th as a potential date for your public hearing. That is the closest we can get a public hearing, and I put quotes on it because that's actually a legal status for that vote, or for that meeting. That there's a status for that meeting, it must be no less than 14 days prior to the vote. So it has to be the 28th. Could be the 29th, could be the 30th, but it can't be any closer to Election Day. So you can have that public hearing on the 28th and have your regular meeting earlier in May, or you can have that public hearing at your regular meeting on May, whatever it is, but that's further away, and which again defeats what the board had discussed as an idea of how you wanted to kind of get back to that debate and dialogue about what's in the budget. So right now in our schedule, we have it listed on the 28th. If there's a change in feeling about that, now would be a great time to let us all know so we can change, but just to sort of lay out the schedule, that's what it looks like. So
you were saying the 28th was the closest date to what?
To the election.
On the 11th?
Yes. On June 11th.
June 11th.
You have to have your.
At least 14
right.
days, okay.
Now, people vote absentee 30 days before.
Yeah,
but that's neither here nor there.
Did you say we could then have, if we didn't want another 28th, we could do the 29th, the 30th?
What I mean is that you don't have to be stuck to that date. You could pick the week before, you could pick, it's not like by law you have to be specifically on the 28th. The reason why you pick the 28th is because it's far enough back, and yet as close as you can get.
I won't be here.
So there you go.
I'll be in.
I won't either.
Yeah, I'm out of town for like 3 weeks.
Okay. So you may want to have it part of your regular meeting in May then, perhaps. Just a
Because
thought.
we could scoot it up from the 28th.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gone from the 17th until the 1st.
And I may not be here on the 12th, or 13th.
May 13th.
Maybe we'll have to do some caucus, can we just
You
extend?
can figure it out. Yeah, it doesn't need, but to know
But
that
we have
that
to
date is an
schedule
issue,
that, yeah.
now is the time to know that.
Yeah.
So we'll work on that here. And we obviously have to keep talking about the Camden date as well. But
I'm glad that was mentioned.
so also what's not on here is that the absentee ballots, so again, as we had done as the town last year, all items that were on the town meeting warrant are voted on by secret ballot. So this process follows that to a T. And So once that warrant is completed at your next meeting in April, on April 8th, then ballots will get printed, absentee ballots can be requested, so forth and so on. And the one other change, though, from that isn't like past years, is that, as the board may recall, but others at home may not, charter was changed in November, and those articles that were at the end of the warrant every time that we voted on every year to say that we're going to allow ourselves as a town to accept, gifts of money or property, those are now included in the warrant, or included in our charter. So those are we don't have to vote on those as a town every year. That should shorten the ballot a bit until you look at the memo and you see there's all those different questions, but there's nothing we can do about that. So in any event, so that sort of gives a timetable and a big picture of what the next few months look like. Does that make everyone good? Okay. All right. So the budgets got delivered. Everyone here, I think everyone's got their budget books. If not, I think Megan went around and she was like a little elf delivering them to everyone. It was very nice. Nice of her. Thank you, Megan. Tonight is number 2, which is the budget overview meeting, which is really to talk about the big changes. And then the review meetings, which are those 3 meetings where we really go through each department and talk about them. And again, we're going to talk about that. So let's move ahead. So the last year has been colored by damage. We had the sprinkler issues here, sprinklers at the Opera House. Those damages were still going through those repairs. The RES site, we know all that went through that. Obviously the park, water resource recovery facility, we just had that conversation. I won't belabor that. But a lot of time has been devoted to each of these areas. And then I would also mention EMS, and certainly this board has talked about EMS. I don't know, it's probably been on your agenda for the last 5 months. I'm not sure Michael and Kim know that there's anything else we talk about at this point than EMS, but we're on that list. But for the budget committee, certainly you guys haven't been here and been listening to this, but there will be, I think the board, even though it's a new department, it's a department that's been talked through on a number of different occasions over those meetings. So I think though it's new for them and it'll be new for you, there's a little bit more familiarity that the board may have than you may have in just going through that. So certainly you got questions that when we get through that on the 25th, the 18th, 19th. That will be the time to, certainly make sure you understand what's being talked about and discussed and all the options. Donut Festival was obviously a huge success last June. Coldest day, wettest day you could possibly imagine in June, but there it was. And the West Rockport Fire Station under construction, approved by the voters, and we're making headway. It's slow, but steady progress over there on that site. So, challenges, real quick. Talked about EMS. That is a challenge above all challenges in this budget. The cost, the manpower required, staffing required, the equipment required. It changes the way that the town of Rockport works. It changes the way that we manage people. It makes us a different town than we have been. And for every budget that I've ever been a part of, whether I was on the board or I was been in this position, we've been thankful that we haven't had incredible staffing and personnel costs from our fire department, largely because our volunteers are so outstanding, and they remain outstanding. The challenges are that beyond our volunteers' control, the world around us and the world around for-profit EMS services is one that's crumbling around us. And the service that we are currently contracted with has been operating and has proposed a sizable increase for them to continue working with the town of Rockport and the towns of Camden, Lincolnville, and Hope. Through that process, that forced, I think, staff, myself, but I think also the board to examine options and examine what's the best foot forward for Rockport moving forward. We talked a little bit last year in the budget process. I think, you know, Clay at one point talked about ripping the Band-Aid off. And I don't think I was as prepared for what that meant at that time last spring as we had to be by the time we heard the cost and we heard what was going on in that world, and what it meant for us to really have to be ready to staff up and put our policies and procedures in place and the equipment. It's a sizable lift, but I think that we have a plan in this budget that gets us part of the way there. The other part of the way that we'll have to get there is working with neighbors and working with Camden, working with Rockland, working with Hope, Lincolnville, because one town can't solve regional EMS problems alone. And we're not seeking to do so in here. So, thanks, Michael. Talked about staffing needs. We had an assessment, went through, worked with our department heads last fall, and some of that is looking at some of our budgets here. Water crossings, we did not have our usual capital planning meeting, partly because we had damage, but we also were a little bit delayed in getting some of the numbers we needed on some of these issues. But we have a number of major water crossings, which are culverts right now, which are probably, 3-foot culverts that probably should be box culverts that are going to cost several $100,000.
I was going to ask for the definition
Yeah.
of water crossing.
So that's the water crossings we're talking about. We're talking about
Underground.
So
Crossing
we're
the streets.
by Rockport Diner, over by Meadow Street, Gurney Street, West Street Extension, which is one that was supposed to be funded by FEMA in part, but they've stepped away from any responsibilities to any real degree. Chris's Road. So we're talking about 5 to 7 of them that we need to address in the next 3 to 5 years. 3 to 5 years, or 2 to 3? 2 to 3 years. Facility needs assessments. We have a number of buildings that we need to look at. Look at where are we going with this building? And we've talked in small part last budget process about the Opera House. The contractor who we've been working with was bought out, and the work that had gone into what they planned to give us went away, so that didn't happen. But we need to have someone to take an exhaustive look at that building, and I'm talking about the Opera House. What are we looking at? What's our, whether it's sprinklers, windows, doors, insulation, we need to look at the whole kit and caboodle. Yeah.
Is that something that would be done in-house or hired contract to come in and do it?
Hired contractor, yeah, outside. We've also been talking about mold and investigating mold in our public safety building, so we've also, that's recently come to light. And then you want to talk about facility needs, just walk down to the harbor and walk around the corner and look down the side of the harbor master's building facing the beach. Not a pretty sight. So there's a lot that needs review. That kind of folds into storm damage, but we're in a very concerning place on that note. Storm damage, I'll touch on storm damage, and I'll jump back to general assistance. The water crossings is how we started here 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, when it came to FEMA. And we're going to talk a little bit tonight about maybe finally putting the bow on that as a town, about Robinson Drive. But the storm damage does not stop. The fisherman's side is horrendous, parking area, and this is just the beginning. So we need to be talking about this, and we need to be planning ahead. We've also put I've put some money in here that talks about harbor, and we'll talk about that later. General assistance, and I just want to talk about this because it's not something that we talk about in these meetings, in the select board's meetings, and the budget committee certainly. We have a exploding issue when it comes to general assistance. So we have 2 facilities in town, which are operating and accept vouchers for general assistance. We have an incredible homelessness problem in Mid-Coast Maine. But these two entities, being two hotels that accept general assistance vouchers, it attracts people who are looking for a place they know they can go there. And due to the management and the way that the general assistance program has morphed since COVID, reared its head 4 years ago, largely it's very difficult to put people through the same paces we used to be able to with general assistance. If they are homeless, they are an emergency, and we have to work doubly difficultly hard to put them in housing.
Okay. When you say the changes, is that state mandated changes?
Well,
not Rockport itself?
No, not Rockport. None of this is
I
Rockport.
just want to make sure.
We don't set the rules on general assistance. We merely manage a program that the state has created with their rules, and they reimburse us for 70% of our costs that we pay out for someone's needs. It doesn't reimburse us for the time that our staff puts in, nor does it reimburse us for, all of the non-70% related issues. Now, there are other funds that we have, not nearly as numerous as Camden, but general assistance is largely how we fund this. And when we go into the budget, this, just to give a for instance, as of January 1st of this year, we had already served as many clients as we had all last fiscal year. So we had as many in 6 months as the prior year. And that trend line is continuing. Now, we've got some things in the budget to hopefully abate that issue and to try to work with some of these individuals to get them off of general assistance and into more permanent housing, because that's really what some of these folks need. Is they need a permanent place to stay, not just 30 days at a time, which is really what general assistance is meant to be. But we'll talk about that later.
John, can I just, so was I hearing that we perhaps, some of these motels in the area are sort of acting as like they're attracting folks who need general assistance who aren't necessarily Rockport residents?
That's right.
But these are business owners who run these motels who don't live in Rockport, I don't believe.
Yeah, no.
Who have created sort of a situation where it's attracting people that are taking up a lot of our town resources, and by state law, we have to do that. But we do have, it's an interesting situation because we have tried to address some of the ownership issues of these motels, but it's quite a lucrative business for the motels.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, and just to give a for instance, so the maximums for an individual who is who qualifies, one person, so no children, no spouse, one person, less than $1,000. The idea is you can live on, this is what the state's model is, you can live on less than $1,000 a month. Now that's, it's impossible. So there's a number of issues, and I don't go too far into it, but the legislature has tried to make changes, but it is stuck because there are advocates for the unhoused. It is, for the same reason entitlements on the federal level get just very difficult to deal with. Legislature is also having difficulty making changes. Meanwhile, Rockport is doing what Rockport has to do and trying to follow the law. So I don't want to get too far into it, but you're right. Like there's
sort of a disconnect here between
complete and utter disconnect, and we're managing this system that's broken. So any of that. So we'll go to departments. So key budget changes. Town managers. We brought on HR consultant. Largely, I'm paying that person right now out of our legal monies, but that person, that will be a fixed part of the town manager budget. It's working, I think, quite well. But anytime you bring someone in, I think Eric said to me best after the last meeting, he said it's a bit like hiring an auditor and having them audit you all the time. I think that's true words are never spoken, but I think it is a very good step for the office. We have some election expenses. This is a presidential election coming up. The costs are really more about the tune of the election and the size of the turnout than it is in terms of moving spaces. So it's not really about the move.
Do we benefit from absentee ballots? Is that better for us, the more people who vote absentee?
If you ask a clerk which they would rather do, I think a clerk would rather have them vote in person when they're inundated with absentee ballot requests. And then once they're through the absentee ballot requests, they're like, well, hopefully they all voted via absentee. So I think it's probably two sides of a different coin. I don't think that I think I would rather have a plan. I'd rather know and have all the ballots, that people are going to vote and there's no issues the day of with storms and power and who knows. But I think it's probably.
So expense-wise, it doesn't save us money if more and more people use the absentee ballot system that's available.
I think probably it saves us more money in person because of the fact that regardless, you have to be here from 8 to 8, whereas there's a cost of processing those absentees, stamps, the like. I mean, there's a little bit of that goes on. The other issue that we have is because of our tax due date, it sort of dovetails not nicely with absentee ballot season. So everyone's coming in to pay their taxes at the same time they're trying to get an absentee ballot, which isn't great, but anyway. Keeping going here, planning a vehicle purchase. The old police cruiser that we've been using for the last couple of years, there's some concern with maintenance and upkeep of that vehicle. There's a $4,000 exhaust repair that we just had to do on its cousin cruiser, and could happen for this very same one. Thought is to get rid of it before that issue climbs higher up the list. Finance clerk duties, sort of shifting around responsibilities and finally taking some of those responsibilities for staffing support for police and folding it into that position. So we're somebody through the day who can support our officers. Speaking of officers, there we go, Chief. Our assessing contract, so we're going to make a change to the Camden contract to end the deputy assessor position and instead promote our assessing clerk to more responsibilities. So rather than 3 people, we really work out of 2 people in that same office, but ask a little bit more. Our Rebecca, who started as our assessing clerk last year, passed the CMA test in the fall, which was not for the faint of heart and something probably I couldn't do. She's a rock star, and we want to really give her more to chew on. She's doing great. Insurance, so EMS, don't screw up. So we need to talk about insurance. General assistance, this is where we're talking about rental assistance and increasing claims. Police department. So this is an area where we have some incredible costs in terms of overtime right now. And right now we have 4 officers. We have a department set up for 5. If we have all 5 officers, we're still putting in about 2 hours of overtime every week. With 4 officers, we're splitting that up, not equally 4 ways, but that 5th shift is being paid out of overtime. So the amount of overtime, then of course if anyone gets sick or people go to training or on and on and on we go, we're operating structurally out of a deficit in the best of all worlds. Now add on to that fact that people who we're trying to hire are all green. They are not, none of them have been to the academy, none of them can walk right in and go to work unsupervised, which means we're still paying out overtime for our officers to oversee the person we just hired until that new person can go to the police academy. The next time someone can go to the police academy will be next fall. So we're going to be well into this time next year before if we hired someone today, and we have a couple candidates right now, before we could actually fill that 5th position with a full-time person and 5 people working fully through their shifts. and then we'd have only 2 hours of overtime a week. I feel like the way we're set up right now is not a recipe for success, given the market of who's out there to hire and what we have to look at. So what I'm proposing is to add an additional officer position, which basically equates to about as much as what we're paying for overtime right now. Obviously, benefits are a different situation. And that largely, it's still a positive and an increase, but structurally allows us to withstand some of these issues that crop up, whether it's, again, injury or illness or vacation or whatever it might be. I'm not comfortable with a department that's basically walking a high wire act all the way through, and that's really where we're operating out of right now. Last year we cut, well, I shouldn't say cut. I'd say Chief cut out of his request new radars for the cruisers as well as a cruiser. And that was in light of the fact that we had a new contract last year. We had to go a long way to get our officers into the ballpark of where other communities are. Now, of course, other communities since then have, guess what, jumped way farther ahead of us. I'm not hearing any issues from our officers right now, but part of the sort of back and forth of that with our officers and having those union negotiations was, look, we'll go where we're going to go with in terms of staffing, but on the other hand, we're not going to be able to do some of the equipment, some of the other needs that you have. Now, a year later, we have to meet those needs. So the cruiser, the radars, there's another program that Chief had been working on for body cameras and tasers, but the costs, it's not ready, and the costs are too high for this budget year. So he agreed I'm just going to hold that off, and we'll talk about that a future year.
So the radar, that's for speeders? So we're
Yep.
going to enforce
We're going to
our speed limits?
Yes. Don't, Jeff, careful. Jeff had a bad day last year, so Jeff knows that they work, but yeah, anyway. So other key budget changes. So fire department minimal, really we're moving the two new staff that were part of the last budget and moved them to the EMS budget. And then we have the EMS budget. So it's a new department. It's a net addition of 6 positions. This has been, so obviously the board's discussed this, but obviously in some cases, did that really just happen? That was crazy. Okay, we got stuff falling from the ceiling here. So it's a new department, and for those who are unfamiliar, basically the staffing of this department would be a 24-hour position, 24-hour rotations, and you would have 8 different employees. And two will be working at any one time. So a driver and a paramedic. There are a number, as we go into it, we'll talk about where the revenues come from, because this isn't merely an issue of cost. The sooner that you are a transporting authority and you're bringing those who are injured or who require service, as soon as you're a transporting authority, then you can bill. So the ability to get this service up and running and get it to a place where we are standing on our own 2 feet and can becoming a transporting authority here in Rockport, then we can recoup those funds for each of those billable scenes. So that's, but until that happens, we're going to be simply paying out staff, and that's obviously a concern. And there's obviously the other part of this, which is at what point are your neighbors ready to also join in this effort? So that will obviously come as part of a discussion with Camden.
But some of that cost would be offset by not having the contract with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Once you end that contract, then you wouldn't have to pay. Okay. Right. That's true. And so the budget as it's presented here is right now it's proposed to end the contract with Northeast on January 1st, and to hire staff in the middle of the fall which would give approximately a 3 or 4 month window to get the staff up and running, get everything working, go on calls with Northeast, just as Camden's going on calls with Northeast right now, that we would be able to provide care, we wouldn't be able to transport. And then once that happened, where we would say, okay, we're ready to take this on, we would inform Northeast that we no longer need their services, and then we would be able to, I see you, Janet, and then from that point, the town of Rockport would be in that, in that sort of driver's seat. So, hi, Janet.
Hi. If we hire EMS workers, is there someone in here, are we hiring someone that's going to do the billing once we can transport?
Yeah.
Is that, where is that in here?
So there's a part of that budget to have a contract with a provider who would do the billing for us. We wouldn't do it ourselves. So, and we also are signing we have a contract currently with a provider who would work with us on billing out accidents of a more of a vehicular nature too. So sort of your car crashes that you see sometimes at 17 and 90. That's a new aspect of this that the board approved a policy to allow us to do that as well. So we're sort of trying to do whatever we can to find revenues to offset the costs that we're incurring. And I should say, and this is an important note, those car crashes, when we bill them, we're only billing for non-residents. So if you and I met the wrong way with a bumper to bumper, we're okay because we're residents. But if someone from Hope and Union, Massachusetts, even better, Rockport, Massachusetts, then we bill them twice. No, just kidding. No. Yeah, Helen.
And they'll think they got a bargain.
As I understand what I've heard through the grapevine, is that one of the problems, one of the big costs for North, whatever they call themselves, is that they are called over to certain facilities because somebody fell and they get them up, so they aren't transporting, so they're not getting paid.
Yep.
Since those particular facilities are not in Rockport, I figure we won't have those costs.
That's very true. Yeah. So we don't have. So the Helen's question for those who couldn't hear at home, a major cost for ambulance services are for nursing facilities or healthcare facilities where those who work there for whatever reason, either their protocols or whatever they may be, someone may fall, a patient may fall, and they're not able to lift assist them. And so what will happen is they'll call the ambulance service, who will get them up and check them out and make sure they're okay, even though it's a nursing facility. But nevertheless, because they're not being transported to the hospital, those are not billable calls. And that you're right, that's accurate. So thank goodness Corey Hill's across the line. But we'll also support. So let's say, for example, Camden is called to Corey Hill, and they get a call, and then there's a second call. There's someone with chest pains up on John Street. That's where we'll be able to cover and work together. And it worked well back when Camden First Aid was doing their thing. And I think, that same sort of collaboration that the fire departments have had is really going to be the spirit of this and make it work well. That's I think where I'm really leaning on, I'm hoping. So, any other questions? All right. So that's pretty much that side of it. We moved the EMS in, so this is really EMS, but the big picture is literally the picture up above here, that's a parking lot. It was. And the last piece here is the strategic plan. So there's a $60,000 item in there. We had received some quotes last fall. Orion and I had met with Viewshed, who is working with the Lesher Family Foundation, as well as they're working with the VPI task force on a number of different projects in town, and have great familiarity with our town and in part our harbor. And so we got a quote to put together a strategic plan. The idea, I think, would be that obviously this is the funding model for it, but but there'd be a task force, probably not unlike the Wharf Task Force, with some really high-quality folks who will be part of that, who can really represent. There's a lot of stakeholders in the harbor, so many. And we want to make sure all those stakeholders are part of whatever that plan becomes. But the truth is, the pictures don't lie. Forget about 1,000 words. This picture is worth like $3 million because we've got a real issue here. And if sea level rise is going to go up 3 feet in the next 50 years, this king tide storm here we see here on this picture is just the beginning. And what do we do with Harbor Master's building that's already has the power getting ripped from it? What do we do with the lime kilns? What do we do with the fisherman's side? What do we do with what does Rockport Marine do? These are all questions that we really have to face head on. And I was out there today. Doug sort of stopped by and saw action, so swung in. But it was we can't continue to throw more dirt in a hole that's going to get washed out to sea. And that's largely what we've been doing in the harbor. These holes fill up, we throw dirt in a hole. Well, thank goodness nobody's going to fall in it today. And then a week later, a different hole opens up. And it's not a solution. It's really just, it's horrendous on every level. And we need to have a better solution here because one, it's one of the greatest assets we have in our town, but two, it's completely bananas to try to treat a problem the way we've been treating it, which is literally throwing dirt in a hole and watching it go away. Yeah, it's whack-a-mole. So we need a plan that we can feel good about as a town, that all of the different stakeholders can feel like they're a part of, that allows us to all move forward. Because right now, I think there are times it feels as though that, well, what about this group? And what about that group? And how come what happened here? And we have to somehow find a way to find the things we all agree upon and fix them together. So I'm hoping we can get that with this plan. It won't come cheaply. There's also some grant funding that's recently been made available, and we may be able to offset a good part of the cost with that grant funding. So we'll be working on that. Key budget changes, again, storm damage. EMA is going to buy an enclosed trailer for signs. The amount of signs you, one, lose every storm, and every time something happens, people steal them. Or two, just merely you need them available. Every storm, we have conversations, either a text thread between department heads, myself. Sometimes we'll have pre-storm meetings to go through who's getting what, how are we doing this, where are we going, and it always involves we got to buy more signs. We need more signs. Well, let's buy the signs now as part of the budget process, and we have the trailer to bring them around. And EMA is a great place for that because it's neither public works nor fire but it covers everything. And when we have these big events, that's what we really are looking for. Public Works, so there's an additional Class B driver position in this Public Works budget. As I sort of described in my letter that's part of this, the Buildings and Grounds Supervisor position was originally part of Public Works. And what has happened is by my pulling the Public Works Supervisor out of Public Works, there's one less person to plow the roads. So while putting that Public Works Supervisor back in a plow truck, he's more than willing to do, there are some there's tens of thousands, probably hundreds of thousands, well, I'll say we're getting close to 100,000 at this point, of what we're saving by the labor we're getting out of the Buildings and Grounds Department. I know now's not the time to go down there, but just if you can get a chance to go and poke your head in the bathroom down at the Harbor Masters building. We talked a lot about through budget last year, and what we were able to get done for less than the money that if you remember, there was like a $40,000 number, and I think I cut it back to 20, and then I think you guys wanted to put a little bit more back in it. And Diana had some thoughts about the welcome mat of the town and so forth. We were able to get that done for a little over the 20,000 we put aside in there, but it looks phenomenal. And those are the types of things that we have to do to feel good about, these projects. And that's money that we're saving by having that Buildings and Grounds department. They're doing, we're not hiring out the roofing on those kiosks, which are the roofs that go over the picnic tables. Matt, who is in our Buildings and Grounds department, he used to do roofing, and he can go up there and get it done faster than anybody we'd hire from, Horch or anybody else, and for a lot cheaper. So we've got good talent there, and but again, that's talking about Buildings and Grounds. We still need someone to plow that road. So the additional Class B driver also allows us to create 2 distinct crews. Because one issue we ran into last year is if someone takes a day off, or we don't have enough people to work in 2 different parts of town at the same time. And with the amount of work that we have to accomplish, we need 2 crews going. We need equipment, and we need the right amount of people. And we talked about that at some point about, well, we're going to increase the amount of money we're putting into roads. Do we have enough people to do it? Well, the answer is no. But the reason why is that we didn't have the right equipment, and 2, we need to be cutting back in that area and saying we need to do less road work isn't the answer, because we're barely making the standard as it is now. But this will allow us to operate with 2 crews, and I think that'll be a huge, huge benefit. I talked about the equipment purchases. Security cameras are in here for the Public Works facility. I don't know how we haven't had them to this point, but we're going to have them now. I know had been one, some talk a while ago, but we have a lot of equipment out there. We have fuel. We have salt and sand. There's a lot of things that need to have eyes on, and we're so far off the road. A lot of times you won't even know what's in there. So security cameras are a necessity at Public Works. And then the water crossing culverts I talked about a while ago, so I won't go over that. This is the mowing contract. This will be the first year of a new mowing contract in this coming up budget. Opera House, talked about the buildings needs. That needs to be hit. Buildings and Grounds, I talked about the mold remediation over at Public Safety Building, and just the overall cost of building maintenance. These projects in these older buildings we need to address. The West Rockport Fire Station, it's a new budget, so we don't know how much it costs to run the electricity there or the heat, or there's a little bit of guesstimating that goes with that. We're gonna all just go for the ride on whatever that means. Special assessments, we're expecting an increase in revenue sharing. State revenues are up, which should be good things for revenue sharing. We're not topping the very top of what we expect revenue sharing, because I think that's foolhardy. That's a good way to end up disappointed when things do turn bad. But again, the increase there should help us to offset some of these new costs. And goldenrod either makes you sneeze or it makes you ask questions. So, any questions? Hey, Helen. Okay.
I'm old, I'm getting stiff. And back to storm damage.
Yeah.
I know Megan's been working with, and Diana have been working with FEMA about the Robinson thing, and I saw something on the agenda today. Is that part of, when can we expect, how much can we expect money from the feds and the state concerning storm damage reimbursement, and how will that affect the budget, especially Public Works and the harbor and so on?
Do you want to talk about timing first, Megan, and I'll talk about Robinson Drive?
Okay.
So the way FEMA typically works is that you have to do the repair work before they reimburse you. So it's a liability to us until they give us the reimbursement. Luckily for the storm that washed out Robinson Drive, the feds are reimbursing us 90%. The state is reimbursing us 5%. So that leaves us a 5% balance, which is way better than 100%. So that's how those projects typically work. For the damage done at the harbor, I spent some time today. We actually have a gentleman that lives in town that works for FEMA mitigation. and I emailed him to see if there's emergency mitigation measures that we could take, or if there's different roads that we could go down, because obviously just putting dirt in a hole down at the harbor is not effective. And the way mitigation typically works through a case like this is that they go through estimating what it costs to put back what was originally there, and then they go through that process, you get permits, and then it will go to mitigation to see if there's things that they could do to prevent that from happening again. So that extends your project out 18, 24, sometimes 3 years, just where we're headed now with Robinson Drive. To see if we can do some of that work ahead of time, because a lot of times if you do the work ahead of time and they don't sanction your work, they're not going to reimburse you anything for what you've done. So it's an incredibly painful process to go through that. So I'm hoping that the gentleman that lives in town can help through that process a little bit and see if there's measures that we can take now instead of just putting dirt in a hole and having it wash out for the next storm. I mean, we've had 3 storms in the last 2 months that are 100-year storms. So it's certainly not something that seems to be going away. And the more that we can do to prevent the damage that we're getting, the better, which really plays into the water crossings too. We really need to upsize the culverts and stuff that we have in town. We are set up for snow. We're not set up and prepared for the amount of water that we're getting, and it just has nowhere to go, which is why Robinson Drive's getting flooded out. West Street Extension floods, Meadow Street floods. Like, we're just not prepared for the amount of water that we're seeing. And it's really important that we find ways that we can get that water to go other places other than causing damage.
Any other questions?
You got to you. Is this just in general, or still just talking storm damage here?
No, this
Oh,
is
boy.
everything.
I think they're in general at this point, Clay. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Clay Tolman, anyone that doesn't know me. So I guess just to back up, what'd you call it, a 3,000-foot view. That warrant that was passed last November, can you just summarize that again real quick, just so everyone knows, I guess, what with regards to the budget committee, what all that included?
The change of the
this
charter?
process, yeah.
Okay. So the change to the budget, well, we back up. The prior charter was written from the perspective of the only way that there can be a budget is if there's a budget committee and there's a select board to approve a budget. And the challenge was, and I think the board probably can speak to this because the board, there's certainly other group that put forward, because there was a lot of discussion last summer about what to do with the changes to the charter. But what we found was a couple things. One, the way that the warrant was written and the way that we had been operating all these years was wrong. We'd been operating from a perspective of budget committee recommend, here's the amount, select board recommend 5-0, budget committee recommends 6-3, and going through that process on and on and on and on. But that's not really what the charter said. What the charter said, as we found last spring, is that the budget committee is to make recommendations on the budget, and those recommendations will be on the warrant. But those recommendations should go to the select board, and then the select board makes a decision on their final budget from there. So what had happened was all these years, it was really reversed. The budget committee was commenting last on the select board's budget. So after reviewing that issue, when it came to the way that the charter had been written, I think there was a deep desire from the select board to make some changes, one, and two, to talk about what is the role that the budget committee and the select board should have as they're moving forward. And as in digging into it, one part of it was, what happens with the fact if we don't have a budget committee? What happens if people don't run for the budget committee? We had yet another year where not all positions were filled. We've had years where only people who were written in were elected. We've had, so that there hasn't been the same role of the budget committee in 2023, 24 than there had been when the charter was drafted in 2006 or before that. So what the changes allowed is that the budget committee has kind of somewhat self-determination. The budget committee can organize, elect a charter, elect a chair, organize itself before the budget process. They can operate just as they always have, which is fine. If for some reason the budget committee doesn't happen, either because there's 2 members or because we can't get a quorum or whatever it might be, then there is no budget committee, but the town can still have a budget. So what was happening was that issue had to be resolved, so that way at least whatever happens, now there might become a year where the budget committee there's a lot of interest in the budget committee, there's 10 people running for it, and everybody wants to be on the budget committee and they want to get involved. Great. Or there might not be any interest in the budget committee and everyone says, well, ho-hum, I don't have the time to do it, as we all know people say from time to time. And then there can still be a budget in the town and the select board can still operate. Before their hands were tied, now they're not. But in either circumstance, the budget committee can largely do what it's always done. Really the only change is the timing, in that the budget committee's votes will come before the select board's final vote. That's really the only change in terms, and that's really more about scheduling than it is about, impact. It's really more about the fact that the budget committee has to make recommendations on what's in the budget. Those are what will go on the warrant, and then the select board will react to that, which is kind of what was happening before, but there was an added step in the middle of that where the select board was meeting, and then the budget committee was meeting, and the select board would meet again, then the budget committee would meet again, and it was like, it was sort of endless. And so as a result, this somewhat fixes that issue as well. So it makes a little bit more sense logically. I don't know if there's probably more you guys want to add to that in terms of the charter change, but that was pretty much the biggest part of that adjustment.
I think that's an accurate, it really was to make sure that if we're in a situation, I think we have 5 budget committee openings coming up in June, that we aren't hamstrung as a town if our residents don't step up and serve on the budget committee. But we're glad you're all here and glad we have a budget committee. So.
If I might, being the vice chair, I got to say that I'm disappointed in the process this year due to the fact that I understand that the vote had to take place in November before we would be able to notify the budget committee to do a chair and a vice chair. That didn't happen until the Wednesday before the budget books came out. Excuse me, so there was at least 2.5 months that we could have been notified to have our meeting. We had a meeting, there were 3 people that showed up, primarily because we were inquisitive about when it was gonna happen, on my part anyway. And I think Jeff had made mention he knew about it in his head, and some people's went to junk mail and they never got them. So if we weren't able to have our meeting on that Friday morning, we wouldn't have been able to have input. As we were, well, that's what I see you shaking your head.
Do you want me to respond, Mark?
Well,
I'm glad to respond.
Well, I'm not done yet.
Well, okay.
I'm not done yet.
Okay.
I'll do this.
Okay.
But that's my take on it, is
Okay.
that after November election, there should have been an immediate opportunity for us to gather elective chair, vice chair, and get prepared, rather than have it be 3 days before the budget books come out. There needs to be a fail-safe. I mean, if you attach an email and send it to somebody and somebody doesn't open it, or you don't hear back from someone, then there needs to be an opportunity to say, hey, did you get your email?
somehow there needs to be a fail-safe so that we don't end up having 3 people instead of potentially 7. We had 6 that Friday morning, so that's my 2 cents worth, and maybe I didn't have all the information because you weren't able to make it that morning. But we did the best we could with Megan's input. Thank you.
Can I ask, I'll clarify, what month, are we talking this budget right now, or?
Yes. This budget,
So just previous November?
We had a.
Okay.
As it was explained to me, there wasn't a call for the budget committee to get together to elect a chair and a vice chair until after the November meeting, the November voting results, because we may not have had to have had the budget committee. From that point of the vote until last Wednesday, there was a great deal of opportunity to get us together and have a chair and vice chair elected. That didn't happen. And there was no fail-safe if nobody had heard from anybody, either by a return email or a phone call. So we almost didn't have it happen if it weren't for Clay and I mustering up 2 or 3 other people to get them in there on Friday morning.
I didn't realize you were speaking this year. I thought.
Yeah, no, I mean.
Maybe you were referencing a year ago.
No, this,
I was like, okay.
and like I said, that was the Wednesday, so that gave us ultimately Thursday and Friday. And if we couldn't get 5 people together, which we luckily got more than that, we wouldn't have had an input, which I think is an injustice to the people not to have an extra set of eyes look at the budget.
So there was an email 2 weeks before a Wednesday meeting, prior to that Friday meeting, that went out from Megan to all the members of the budget committee via their town email accounts for them to meet and elect a chair and go through the process to, basically organize. At any point, if there was interest from any member of the budget committee to have met prior to, hey, John, do you think we could pull together a meeting? I don't think that would have been an issue in any way. I think the real question, is, at what point do we absolutely need to have a budget committee put together? And we absolutely need them before the budget process. 2 weeks prior to a meeting is a lot of time, and I think that was sufficient time to be able to get together a group. The other thing I'm going to say is that the issue of a quorum has been a problem for the budget committee for the last 2 years, last 2 budget cycles. And I'm not here to put blame on the people who are here or who showed up Friday morning or who showed up Wednesday night before that meeting, but that's been a problem. And it's been a problem for staff to try to get meetings together and being unable to get quorums and being unable for people to respond to email or say who can make a meeting or who can make a meeting. And so as a result, it becomes a real difficulty in trying to put together even a simple meeting to elect chairs, vice chairs, and what have you. So I hear you, Mark, and I think I'm glad it worked out the way it did. There's a responsibility level everyone has here, whether it's staff and whether it's elected officials. And I understand certainly going through that process, there's a lot of frustrations. I would just add there's a lot of frustrations in the budget process last year and the difficulty in how those votes turned out, which were not in keeping with the spirit of the conversations that were held during that budget process. I don't think those 2 things are related, but I'm merely saying that I think we all could try to seek a better common ground in what we're trying to accomplish. And, I'd like to hope this budget process can get to there. But the board, I'm not going to speak for the board, but there was a great deal of frustration from the board last April and May and last summer about that process and how it played itself out. And I think, if we can have a new day here for everyone, I think we can get the budget and the budget process we need. But it was certainly disappointing to staff, and I'll just reflect the staff's view. that the budget process went down with a negative vote last year without really, that same conversation through the process. So that's, I hope we can do better this year on all sides and get what we need out of that budget. So.
Helen, here you go.
How shall I put this politely? The town email is a roaring pain in the ass to use. And I do look at it about once a month because I have the library committee as well. And I finally learned not to click exit or log off so that I could get back on. But I didn't hear about that meeting until Wednesday afternoon, about 2 o'clock, when I called to see when the budget books were going to come out. And I was told, oh, yeah, and by the way, there's a meeting tonight at 6 o'clock. So if the staff could send out a warning, say February 1st, to everybody's normal email that we look at every day, 2 or 3 times a day, that says, hey, it's getting to be budget season, go check your town email. Then us old fogies won't miss the meeting.
I mean, it's certainly a good point. The hard thing for, someone who's just on the budget committee, not overly involved with the rest of the town. My last email in that inbox was April of last year. So I haven't checked it weekly since April of last year. So it just makes it tough. Certainly, especially when you don't hear back or have any sort of open communication. I think one other contributing factor is that the process, like you kind of said before, the process as a whole has changed a bit this year, so that I think that certainly contributes to it because, we don't have, what is it called, the Capital Improvement Committee, that got disbanded or whatnot. So our October meeting that the Budget Committee was typically involved in didn't happen, and that didn't happen in November, and then it snowballed, of course. So I think we all can agree that the process, we can say the process is to blame. So moving forward, we just really, as a whole, need to work on the process of it, of course, to keep everyone on the same page, I think. So with that being said, is there in the charter or anywhere listed, is there a designated primary communication for the committee, between the committee and the town? With nothing kind of presented like that. I've got a phone I carry around every day that is usually quite easy to get in touch with, or even a pager for that matter. So that's, I think, something that could be worked on, and just a little bit of support for that process might make it feel as though new people could be attracted to that without having any issues. But with that being said also, the process, I guess one other question I had with the disbanded Capital Improvement Committee, is the Budget Committee still gonna be going over the CIP plan kind of in parallel at all to see in these budget cycles what we need to look for, what reserves we need to build up? Because it's, I know the budget is only for this year, but it's, the reserves are for that reason.
No, I think you're right, Clay. I look at that as it's going to be parallel tracks because we didn't go through that conversation. The vast majority, obviously, is Public Works, right? That's where the vast majority of conversations regarding capital improvement are going to rest, and that's really the water crossings issue is really predominant among that, because that's the one that would have been the largest part of conversation in October, November, because it's significant and it's something that needs to be on everyone's radar moving forward. So I look at it I look at them as really happening on parallel tracks, and while the format will still be the same, they'll sort of be self-referential to each other in terms of saying, okay, this is where we're headed, this is our direction, and what is in the plan. So, I think we'll see that on Thursday night, exactly how that plays out.
Fair enough.
Well, I have a dumb question. The select board has an organizational meeting right after elections. And if I'm not mistaken, ZBA did as well, correct, Jeff?
You're supposed to.
Right, but you're supposed to have an organizational meeting right after elections. Wouldn't it make sense for the budget committee to do that right after the elections in June, within a month or so? At least then you have your chair, co-chair, et cetera, moving forward instead of,
Normally, they do.
And normally, it doesn't happen in July.
No.
No, it doesn't. Not the 2 years I've been here, it hasn't. The meeting, it takes a really hard time to get a group together. It just seems to be the way it is. And there's nothing wrong with that, but that's been a difficult fact of it. And trust, Megan has been, has done more work to try to get together a quorum for the budget committee over the 2 years, 3 years that I've been here than any other group that I'm aware of that the town has as a committee. And that's part of the issues that Clay and Helen are talking about is there's a very finite period of time they work out of.
That's what I was just going to ask.
And it's very difficult to, there's nothing wrong with that, but that's just the fact of it. And so it's very difficult to say, we have no work for you until March 1. And then we're going to give you 8 meetings in about a 5-week time, and then see you later.
I was trying to wrap my head around the logistics of that, and if they're not, I'm assuming I was always assuming that, every committee met once a month or something like that, but if there's no need, there's no need.
There's no need.
Yeah.
Okay, so we got to really work on structuring the communication and all that stuff to be effective.
and for that
And
matter,
I-
you could
Guide.
expand on the distribution list, correct? That Diane uses, or no?
I would just recommend putting a forward on your town email to you personally.
No, there's that.
And this isn't to take away anything in the importance of the budget committee, but the meetings on the budget are all public meetings, and any resident can come and have input. I'm not taking away the value of having a group that's designated to do that, but people need to understand that even if for some reason there weren't a budget committee one year, it doesn't mean that the public can't have input and weigh in on the budget. I appreciate the efforts, and I think we should look into ways that we can work on the communication, but
Yeah, could I ask, this is something, tell me who I should talk to about simply the format of what we see on our screen in the town emails. It's only the 3 current, who can tell me how to see all of those messages? Because on my private email, I get, everyone's a line, so I can see the last 10 or 15 messages. With the town email, I only see 3.
the library has Tech Thursdays at 4 p.m. I tell you, it's a great service. You come over here and they'll help you with whatever you're struggling with. I don't know if there's an easier answer, but
Okay.
Those 3 dots. At
That's
the bottom of the email, there's 3 dots and it says load more. You gotta click those and then it will go and open them all up. Drives me crazy in Outlook.
I'm just
Because I'm
finding that out
assuming you're
myself.
using Outlook to see them, right? I said, I'm assuming you're using Outlook to read the Outlook.
Microsoft Outlook.
I'm using whatever the town set up for.
Yeah. Yeah, so if it's Outlook, then what it does is it starts to compress the messages so you can only see 2 or 3 of them, but there's 3 dots, and if you kind of scroll all the way, there will be 3 little dots, and it will say load more, and you click that, and then it will blow the whole message
And
open.
I will say, I think it's a pain in the butt myself. 'cause
It is. I don't like Outlook.
I was like, where did this attachment, there was something there, and then I finally saw 3 little teeny weeny dots. I'm like, let me push that. I'm like,
Okay.
wow.
I know Janet's-
So
let's-
it's,
Or on the side where
A training
where the
session would be
feed
very
is,
helpful.
Yeah, I think let's
there'll be a
not-
little arrow and you can open that.
I mean, long story short, going into
Yeah.
all of this, she didn't know what she didn't know.
No, right,
You
yeah.
can't expect her to just show up to a Tech Thursday.
No.
I think
Tech Tuesday.
oh, no, I'm just suggesting that going forward, because
Know to get an email that she was expecting that we should have got back in July.
maybe we can set up literally sorry, Jeff, a training session especially for newer people, because
Janet would like to say something. She's been patiently waiting, and
okay.
people have spoken
She needs
over
a
her. She's
microphone.
been raising her hand
oh,
nicely.
she's got a microphone, okay.
Okay,
I don't think it's a training session. Last year, my email worked great. John set it up for me. Came right on my phone. Okay? This year, the email that I got went to junk mail. That's not the fact that I don't know how to use it or anything else. I think we should go back to the point of there's no fail-safe. One email was sent up, hers went to junk. We only get emails through the budget season. I had no way of knowing that mine suddenly were going to junk mail. There's no fail-safe.
That's critical.
That's what I believe that Mark was getting to. It's hard to get a quorum. I can see why it's so hard to get a quorum if half the people aren't seeing the emails.
Legit.
The moral to that story is, 8 hours later, we had another 3 people, and it all happened by phone. So we had 6, thank goodness.
Opportunity to look for a better system.
Yep.
Can the town send out emails that it shows if they were read or not? Because if you send it out and no one reads it, then obviously someone can say, huh, these people never saw this email. Just a suggestion.
Maybe.
Yeah, or you can ask people to respond right away.
Yeah. Maybe.
We'll
yeah.
give that more thought.
Yeah, I mean, I think just going forward, maybe a boost of the process might be nice, and obviously communication and start earlier. And if we can get a chair, I think one thing that might help is, you know, it seems like maybe a lot was placed on Megan leading up to it when she obviously already had a lot going on in the budget season. So if we could get a chair elected earlier, whenever that be, maybe that would even take a lot off Megan for communication. And it would put it onto the chair and give, or whoever within the budget committee, and give the budget committee a little more, I don't know if motivation is the right word, but self-perseverance into this process. And then if it doesn't happen, then it doesn't happen, but it wasn't because they were sandbagged.
Yeah.
Sounds legit.
Okay.
Sounds legit.
Good. Good things
I'm
raised.
learning.
So welcome. I'm glad everyone finally, we've got a budget committee, so. Do we have to do anything else tonight with that?
No.
Okay. And then the next time we,
That's right. We got more on the agenda?
yeah, we've still got
Yeah.
more stuff on the agenda. I just
Okay.
want to make sure we're done with the
Okay.
budget committee discussion on that.
Is it rude if we leave?
Not at all, not at all. Can we go too? Oh, no, wait.
No.
No.
I think it would
No,
be
you can't.
We
compassionate.
can't, actually. We have some
Much more to do.
important stuff to do, so.
Compassion.
Thank you for coming, and sorry about the problems in the organization, and
Well,
we'll,
except for you, Mark.
thank you for coming.
That one-year position's looking more and more appealing.
What? Okay. All right, next, going back up to our action items. We have, I think we go right to the act on the order for the town clerk to develop articles for the annual town meeting. And,
So you have a
We have-
memo here,
yep,
which identifies a long list, long list of bullet points. I've lost track of how many bullets are here, but, so that's an improvement over what we had last year, because
12.
we had, I think, 17 or 18 on the ballot last year. Of course, we don't know how long each of those would be, and obviously the warrant for the town meeting, you know, the budget will be
That'll be
lengthy, but.
several, yeah.
But, yeah. So just to give a character of what's here, we have a question concerning the budget. We have a question concerning the design and construction of a wharf and the expansion of wastewater along Route 90. We have a question to accept roadways. So there are the West Rockport Meadows subdivision, which is just off of West Street Extension. Sort of, you just pulled the West Street Extension. Greg Haining, Ben Hilt was meant to be a sort of business park, and I think it's turned more residential than they thought it might initially be. But there is an ordinance that the town has regarding road acceptance that this covers. And one of the items is, obviously, go through that process. The next step after this meeting would be for this question to go before the Budget Committee and to get their recommendation, and then it would come back. So this is sort of the next point in the process. And there are standards, a great number of standards that cover in that road acceptance ordinance, but I won't get into that now. And then you have a long list of recommendations, well, not yet. You have a question to accept an amendment to the map for map 20, lot 182. Ryan's here, and he can certainly explain more about that. And then I think beyond that, the rest were part of the planning board's work. Am I right?
Yep.
Yeah. And then the only one that's not, I'm saying is not part of the list, though it is included on here, is the issue regarding rental housing units. So the reason why I'm separating that is that I've got, to make it easier for the board, largely in sort of accepting the list as presented. And I'm saying that last one is not part of the list because I understand that there are a number of members of the board who maybe have questions and concerns about moving forward with that at this time. I'll let you do with that what you will, but I'm really identifying them separately so that way, if that's where this is going to go, you can make a motion to accept the list and be there. But if there's more that wants to be said, feel free. But I
guess I do, I think that's appropriate. I think that I'm concerned about this linking of the certificate of occupancy for all rentals, and I just think that that's more of I think we need to understand all of that better, and I think it's
Separate this out.
just pull it out. We've got, we can work on that later. We can ask the planning board or Orion to give us a better sense of what kind of hurdles and obligations we'd be imposing on our landlords by requiring a certificate of occupancy. So I think, thank you for doing it that way, because it simplifies what we do tonight, because we can just make a motion that it accepts this list as presented.
Even though they were going to be separate items to be voted on, right? What this does clearly.
Just pulls it out of what will be
out
on the
of
June
consideration
ballot.
for this
Yeah, we
until
won't-
later,
Yeah, I think
that's smart.
there's more to do on that score.
Yeah.
As opposed to drafting it and say, yeah, no, we don't want that.
Right, waiting till
Yeah.
April 8th, I think that's
Yeah.
one that I don't think,
Pull that out
yeah.
and table it.
Yep, I think there's some value to having a registration requirement, just so we get data, but this is more than that. And I think we want to have a fuller discussion on that question, so.
I agree.
Okay, do we have a motion?
Real quick, before you do, I just want to talk about the zoning amendment question. That
Okay.
one, depending on, because that's contingent on the planning board meeting here in March.
Okay.
It's just the zoning map, if you look at it, it's part on 906, part on 903. So they just want to make the whole thing 906. It's not a contentious item, but depending upon that meeting at the planning board, at April, it might be saying it's not. Depending on if they decide not to
If
recommend
the
it.
planning board doesn't recommend it, then it will not be
Correct.
on the warrant.
Correct. So I just wanted to add that clarity for you.
Okay.
Yeah, I looked at the maps and I was like, oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, I know over
Yeah.
the years, they've cleared up some of those, but this
Yeah.
one must not have gotten found.
Yeah, there's a few of them, so. And I'm happy that we write the one for the wharf, and we'll see what happens in the next few weeks,
Yep, we'll get
Maybe
more
we'll actually
information.
get to speak with Camden and figure something else out. But in the meantime, we should have it ready.
Yeah.
We can always change our mind next month.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, do we have a motion?
It's here somewhere. Nope, wrong one. Wrong one. I move the board order the town clerk to draft the appropriate articles for the June 11th annual town meeting warrant as proposed by the town manager's memo.
Okay, second.
Do we need to say anything about excluding that one, or we're just?
I think it's been done.
Okay.
That part of
That's
the
part of the memo.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Makes
Yeah.
sense. Goes on the tables.
Move along.
Move along.
For another day.
We're not
All
doing
right.
Harbor.
Not doing Harbor.
We're doing
Next is,
Robinson.
Board vacancy?
this is the set date for the select board vacancy
that
nomination
one.
papers.
Do you want
So,
to clarify this?
yeah,
So, the two seats that are expiring in June, Denise and Eric's seats, those seats are, the normal timetable for them to have, for nomination papers to have been available was the beginning of this month. The board, so if there's a vacancy, so that process is moving forward, as usual. If there's a vacancy on the board, the select board may choose to operate within if it's within 120 days window of an election, the select board may choose to add that seat to the election. And state law allows you the right to shorten the timetable within which people can get nomination papers. So, with that, what I'm saying is, between the charter and state law, you can take action tonight in this motion to create, basically to place that seat on the ballot in June and to shorten the timetable for nomination papers on that seat, to have them begin as of tomorrow. And then due at the same time that the other papers are due, on April 12th, I believe.
To have them all do the same day.
All do the same day,
Yeah.
right.
And this would be to fill
A one-year term.
Jim's seat.
Yeah, so
For the
Jim
1
had
year.
1 year left,
Yeah.
well, a few months plus
Yeah,
1
yeah,
year
yeah,
left on his term. So this would just be a 1 year term that
Put
people
that
run
on there,
for.
yeah.
Yep.
That makes perfect sense to me.
yeah, nice not to have a special meeting.
You have to have a
special.
certain amount of time that papers are available normally?
It has to be, so you can shorten the length to as short as 2 weeks. That's what you're voting on. Otherwise, it's
No, but.
45 days, I think is the number.
So 45 days
That's
for
a
a regular
standard.
election with
Yeah.
no vacancy?
Yeah, so
Okay.
instead it's 30, which is allowable by state law.
I think it makes sense to do it.
Yeah, do we have a motion?
What's the official language?
Yeah, that right there.
Oh. Okay. I'll make a motion.
Okay.
I move the board approve placing the recently vacated select board seat on the June annual town meeting warrant and reduce the time the nomination papers are available. Nomination papers will be available for the remainder of this term as of March 12th, and papers will be due on April 12th.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Nope.
Oh,
Yeah.
Do you mean that people who would like to run for the seat vacated by Jim Annis
Yeah.
have to have their signed papers in by April 12th?
right. So they can take them out as early as tomorrow.
Okay,
And the
and
other
then
month.
what about the other two seats? What deadline do they have?
Same day.
Same day, April
day.
12th.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's
Yep.
good,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
what I wanted to know. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye. And yes.
Great, okay. Next,
Wow.
approve purchase and sale agreement for Robinson Drive access.
Yes.
Yes, looks like a good thorough document, lots of detail,
I read it.
yep. You know, we had a town lawyer, somebody drafted it. And it's all, it seems,
It's all-
based on what John's provided us, it's all money that FEMA's gonna provide us for that
Yeah.
purchase.
Yeah.
Everything's been worked out,
And it'll
so,
make the project more resilient. And
that's right.
So it was discussed months
Yeah.
ago anyway.
Yeah. It's
The
right
one thing we do have to do here is hold a special town meeting to approve this land purchase. And I know John suggested next Monday.
Yes, he did. What day did he?
Isn't that Monday? Oh, is that
25th.
2
It's
weeks?
2 weeks away.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yep, the 25th of
The
March.
25th. So it'd be
Yeah,
in
'cause-
conjunction with the budget meeting?
Yeah, we could do it like a half hour or
Or just a few minutes.
Whatever you
minutes
want to do.
before. Yeah,
It's
just
up to
before
you.
the
Only gonna
meeting.
take
I
10 or 15 minutes.
Yeah,
That's what
not
I'm thinking.
Yeah,
The
no
date-
reason to have a separate meeting.
Yeah.
So that worked,
Call
is
the
that
meeting
okay if we did
order.
it just
Say, does anyone
10
wanna say
minutes
anything?
before?
No.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Yeah.
10 minutes
Yeah.
before, we'll do the special town meeting,
So I would,
or how,
probably for simplicity's sake, it'd be better to say 6,
okay,
and then just hope we can,
that we won't take up too much time. Okay,
yeah.
let's do that.
It works.
There's
Then-
there's two things here.
Say 6
Yeah.
what?
To have it start at 6.
I'll
Yeah,
have it start at 6, okay.
Yeah.
yeah, and I guess that's the next item, so let's not, maybe I jumped ahead on that.
Yeah.
A little.
All right, do we have a motion on the purchase and sale agreement
If you find the language.
here?
I move the board approve purchase and sale agreement for Robinson Drive access as presented.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor?
I'm glad a female is paying for it.
I know, that was good news, wasn't it, after
Yeah,
all
I was
that?
afraid of that.
Okay, now we need the special, approval of the special town meeting warrant.
Which one?
Under the special town meeting warrant as amended instead of as presented.
'Cause I wasn't sure. I figured there'd be some date or time you'd have different, so
Okay.
that's
so
why. But
this
you
can
can
be
say it's presented.
Because we are going with
Well,
March
We're gonna
25th.
say, I move the board approve a special town meeting warrant for Monday, March 25th, 2024 at 6 PM.
Okay. Second? Did you say second, Kim? Eric, Kim, any discussion? All those in favor?
Agreed.
So I'll have this printed, you'll need to come in and sign, it's not in there, I don't
Okay.
believe.
Okay. All right. And we have this recommendation we got today from Carrie
Oh, the warrant
Lightman,
is,
our,
it is in here, but I don't know, but it's,
Oh, there's an email for
it is
that.
here,
not
but I
in
don't
the
know if it's a
physical
piece of
packet.
paper yet.
Yeah, I don't think it is. I think,
Yeah, I didn't see it.
I,
No, it
did she put it in? Oh, great, perfect.
Yeah.
okay, we can sign it.
Wow.
For which
great.
one?
For the special
For the
town meeting
town
warrant that we
warrant.
just
That's great.
approved.
Save us some time.
What? Oh.
And it says
Oh,
at 6
okay.
o'clock. I love this in the forenoon, which is so wrong.
I know you, I saw that and I was like, oh,
Forenoon.
shoot.
Forenoon is like before noon. Anyway,
I thought it's like
6
golf,
a.m.
look out, at noon.
you start using fancy terms and we
Yeah.
don't really know what they mean. Anyway,
Is this the
okay,
TIF
we,
memo thing? Is this the TIF memo?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so our town assessor, Carrie Lightman, presented a memo today. And I can't provide a lot of detail. I mean, the memo sort of stands for itself, but the gist of it is that by collecting personal property taxes within our TIF zones actually hurts our collections are lower than if we didn't collect personal property taxes in those TIF districts, which is sort of counterintuitive, but that's what we're being told. And so Carrie's suggestion is that the select board vote to authorize the town assessor to reduce the personal property capture percentage to 0% in the Route 1 and downtown TIF districts. And I guess he holds out, he said you could do it annually, or we can amend the TIFs to take care of the issue.
So tonight would be an annual, and then
Right.
he'll be working, there's a timetable issue that Orion and he and the town attorney have been working on this in terms of the permanence of that and needing a vote on that. Carrie's sense that he had a call in today, but basically the idea is if he gets this authorization before April 1st, that would allow him for this tax year to make this change, following your directive. To do it permanently, we'd have to change the TIF.
And
That's the short of it. is
Okay.
This is a one-shot deal tonight,
So
but
tonight we do it and it's good for this year,
that's what
and
his,
then we'll do it
belief
next year
is.
if we don't change the TIF.
which we
terms.
would probably do, yeah, we'd probably
Yeah.
change it permanently.
Okay.
So this takes that portion out of that? Is that what this does?
Yeah, it just moves it to 0, so we won't collect that personal property in those TIF areas, which is a negative value. So it's sort of like, why I mean, personal property is such a loser on so many levels anyway,
Yeah,
but.
I've never quite understood what, it's always annoyed me, having to do those stupid personal property.
Well, and my only experience on the select board is, you know, we've got long lists of people who
Yes.
owe it, and we never
Yes.
get around, they never pay
Personal
it.
property tax.
Yeah, and we
Yes.
end up just,
It's all business related, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes, it's extremely irritating.
Yeah.
Incredibly.
yes, as the business owners.
How many pools
Yeah,
do you
as a
have?
business owner or a manager that has to fill them out, it's extremely annoying.
Yes.
So his example, it says last year, Route 1 TIF, got $10,761,983 in real estate captured assessed value. And personal property value was negative $1,631,345. And that's the property value, of the private property stuff, right?
And that
Personal
lowered the
property.
overall
And it's a
captured
negative-
assessed value
Is
by that
this-
amount.
So I can
Is it
wrap my head,
negative?
is it because it's in a TIF district, just the rules a TIF district is?
Well, that's, yeah, we're trying to, by doing this, we're trying to protect the ability to capture that value and turn that into dedicated revenue for isolated issues in those, within those districts. Right now, it's like, we're gonna create a project, and the whole purpose of the TIF district is to isolate those revenues in a given, you know, in that area. Why if we can avoid collecting something that is a net negative, we should.
And so this is just an anomaly of the TIF district, like anybody?
Yeah.
This is not in a TIF district.
We're not saying don't have it
Heavy property
anywhere.
taxes, that's a normal thing that we would understand.
It's not uncommon that personal property is a net negative, though. So, for example, overall, our value of personal property, I couldn't tell you what the total number is, but it drops several million every year.
Oh, because
it depreciates, right.
Okay.
So when if you buy a computer setup like that and it costs $5,000 today, computer's lifespan is only 5 years. So at the end of the 5 years, it's worth zero. So there's no value to it, so you're not taxing on it, and it's stupid.
Okay, it's because of comparing 1 year to the next.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was not
So
looking
you're
at it
losing,
Yeah.
it starts to generate a negative return unless people are constantly replacing every piece of equipment every couple of years.
Okay.
Which
That's-
businesses don't do.
That's the,
No.
that's the
You run it until
clarifying
it
element.
dies.
Yeah, you want it to die. You want it to bring it to zero.
That's the clarifying
Exactly.
element right there, that
Yeah.
that stuff depreciates as opposed to real property.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And so he's always fighting everything else went up, and then he's doing the personal property number, and it's
And
like,
it's always going down.
I'm always gonna
Less
lose.
than it was the year before.
Right. So it's
Okay.
like, I'm here, all right, let's do personal property and see how much we lose of where we really should be, you know, and that's,
Okay.
everyone hates personal property.
Now I understand.
Everyone.
So should this,
Should we have this motion
Shouldn't be
authorized?
taxed, you pay sales tax on it
Oh, yeah,
anyway.
how do we authorize this?
Yeah.
should it exclude the Route 90 as well? I mean, where we have a new TIF there, or?
Route 90 doesn't
Okay.
for personal property.
Nobody on there?
Route
There's
1
businesses there, though.
No, I mean, it was
The way the
purposely
TIF
written.
was
Oh,
designed.
it was purposely written to exclude it. I got you. Thank you.
Okay.
So
Just
this
wanted
says
to make
Route
sure
1
we
and
weren't
downtown,
ignoring
right?
something.
Yeah, so what we'd have a motion to
To do what the letter
authorize-
says.
To authorize the town assessor.
Right.
I think just this language.
All right.
I move we authorize the town assessor to reduce the personal property capture here.
Thank you.
That one. I move we
I'd like to make a motion that we authorize the town assessor to reduce the personal property capture percentage to 0% in the Route 1 and downtown TIF districts.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion?
Just had it.
All those in favor?
Okay.
Okay.
Where are you from, Route?
Oh,
I am from
all righty. Liaison reports.
What are those?
You gotta go to meetings first.
Yeah, I haven't had time.
No, I've been busy.
I have nothing to report because the EMS committee didn't meet.
Didn't meet.
Meeting got canceled, they couldn't get a quorum, apparently.
Speaking of quorums, huh?
Yep.
Michael?
I was not able to attend today's Pathways Committee meeting. I know the Conservation Commission is having some nice meetings here in the library. I came to the first one for the season.
Oh, great.
Which was energy usage and weatherization and stuff like that. And that was very good, well attended, so they're doing well. And I think that's all I can remember.
Okay. Parks Committee is going to work to help clean up Harbor Park. They're going to discuss that at their next meeting. Legacy Rockport, as well as getting ready for the season and so many parks
When's the next
things.
meeting?
Parks Committee?
Yeah.
Wednesday?
Oh, is there a storm scheduled between?
Yeah, I don't, I looked, I'm not lifting those logs that rolled into.
Good plan. Good plan.
But,
The next storm's next Saturday.
yeah.
Yeah,
right.
That's right.
Yeah, we're gonna
You'll get it
just-
cleaned
we're gonna
up,
fill the
and
holes.
then it will, with the
We're gonna have our
flogs.
little wheelbarrow with dirt. Legacy Rockport, new signage for the Vulcan locomotive. It's pretty nice looking.
It does.
Working on even the lime kiln sign. Really just working with Adventure Advertising, seeing if we can tone it. It looks very faded and old. So looking at what technology options there might be to just freshen that and make it look new. As well as a potential sign over by Andre that would detail the ice business, the lobster, sort of the other harbor history pieces. So, good stuff happening. And I think as MJ indicated, we've got some meetings tomorrow night, design planning, and some other working group RES meetings, so. I guess that, and on the RES site too, there's also a group really through Legacy Rockport looking into how can we do programming at the RES site in this interim period before we actually begin construction.
Okay.
So there's.
To utilize the space.
Utilize the
Yeah.
space, bring the community together, once the weather's a little nicer.
In addition to the farmer's market. So that's
Exactly,
right,
so
yeah,
the farmer's market will be a piece of that. Concerts, I don't know, but different ideas.
Co-ed softball.
And softball, co-ed softball. All right, I think that's it. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
No, do we have a motion?
Yes, we do.
Don't be so literal.
That's because I
make a
picked on
motion
him on
we
the route.
adjourn.
Oh, you want credit for adjourning, okay.
You can second it.
Yeah, Kim made it. So moved is okay on adjourning.
Oh,
You could be a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.
Here
If
and at
anybody's
home.
still listening, thank you.